And we are backing this work with real enforcement where it counts. Park Enforcement Patrol has issued 289 summonses this year related to pedicab violations, and the NYPD Central Park Precinct has issued 194 related summonses, up from 162 the same time period last year. The NYPD has also seized 19 pedicabs so far this year, compared to just one during the same time period last year. As for illegal vending, Park Enforcement Patrol has issued 294 summonses year to date, and the Central Park Precinct has issued 38 vending-related summonses and conducted 17 seizure operations. Officers also made 3 arrests for trademark counterfeiting, recovering 203 counterfeit items with an estimated street value of nearly $55,000. This teamwork matters even more as we head into the summer, when even more people are coming out to enjoy Central Park. This is the We Outside summer, man. You are outside. We outside too, keeping you safe. And let me be clear, we are not here for quick fixes or one-off crackdowns. Our goal is to create long-term solutions to reduce the need for enforcement, even in the first place. And it's also already working. We are seeing fewer violations related to pedicabs and vending because people are following the rules. Last year, the park saw an uptick in crime. As the mayor said, this year, crime is down, jobs are up, and we are expected to turn that trend and to continue that trend and keep in the summer this park safe, thanks to the coordinated efforts that you see here standing behind me today. This level of coordination does not exist under the previous administration, but the mayor changed the game with the Community Link initiative. Thank you very much to Deputy Mayor Joseph Volek for that. Community Link is about taking action, tackling issues and progress, and delivering real-time results. That's exactly what's happening here in Central Park and many neighborhoods across our city. I'd like to thank the team and the agencies and our partners and the community members who are here, and everyone. Thank you for your help, for making this park safer and stronger, and please come outside. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan Daughtry. And finally, but not can barely understate, cannot underscore enough, the importance of our partnership in this effort with the president of the Central Park Conservancy, Betsy Smith.
First of all, thank you very much, Mayor Adams. You understand Central Park completely and how important it is. We often say at the Conservancy that Central Park is sort of a barometer about the way people feel about the city, and when it's safe and it's clean and people feel comfortable and there's violations, people feel New York's good because we have so many people. So thank you so much for your appreciation of that. My name is Betsy Smith. I'm the president and CEO of the Central Park Conservancy, the not-for-profit civic institution that has been caring for the park for over 40 years. We are very, very pleased to recognize this critical partnership with the City of New York. By working with all of our partners and all the various agencies, we are able to maintain Central Park as a respite for the millions of New Yorkers and visitors every year. That's why I'm so excited about this new initiative, so that we can do everything we can to make the park safe, accessible, and welcoming to everyone. Through our collaboration with the Deputy Mayor of Public Safety's office, we meet weekly with over a dozen agencies, all steered by the Deputy Mayor's team. And we are all working together to tackle whatever the challenge of the day might be. And so far, as the Deputy mentioned, there has been very, very impressive results. But more specifically, when the Conservancy, for example, when our staff hears that there's street lights that are out, we have a new protocol with the Department of Transportation to make sure the lights get fixed and fast. When we express concern about quality of life issues along 110th Street, we began a conversation with the Department of Homeless Services that has resulted in 48 New Yorkers being connected to housing. When a member of our staff sees something concerning in the park, we are able to communicate with PEP and with NYPD in real time and get the help that's needed to address whatever problem has been discussed. And to bolster these efforts, and we're so proud of our new Central Park Ranger Corps. This has been a long time in the making. We really see it as additional eyes and ears for our city partners. We are in the park, on the ground, looking, talking to everybody every single day. So our rangers are designed to address visitor concerns and quality of life issues. The Ranger Corps is tasked with protecting the park and serving as a point of contact for the public. They work very closely with our partners in government to keep the park safe and welcoming, and none of it would have happened without the cooperation of all these city agencies, and that is really the brilliance of this initiative. If you want to solve problems, you need to get everybody at the table, and then you need to keep meeting until the job is done, which in our case is going to be forever. We're really hoping this is a long-term initiative that just lives throughout the next decades, because that's what we need to keep 40 million people safe in the park every year. Not every park, though, has the same challenges, but every park can benefit from this kind of tailored, multi-agency approach, and we are thrilled to be a part of this pilot program. It takes a village, as people say, and in many ways Central Park is its own village. We have so many different constituencies and so many different users, so we could not be more grateful for the level of help and communication that we are getting from the mayor's office and from all of our agency friends as we head into the busy summer season. So I just want to thank you so much. This has been an extremely effective partnership, and we'll do everything we can, leading with our rangers and everyone at the Conservancy, to help the city keep Central Park the iconic place it is for the worldwide reputation that it has. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yes. Mm-hmm. It's a good thing. I mean, we did it right.
What can New Yorkers expect to see in terms of what the patrol looks like? Is it more patrol cars, more mounted cops, more cops on bicycles? What does that look like?
Thank you for the question. As I mentioned before, we put extra cameras in here. Some cameras that people will see, some will not see. New technology cameras where they are also hooked to electric, but they're also solar powered as well. You will also see extra park patrol officers, PEP officers. My office is working with the NYPD to secure 12 to 15 new bikes for bike patrol inside of Central Park. That's breaking news if you want to hit the button, because I didn't say that yet. And and you're going to see some of the park police officers mounted teams, as well as some of the field forces, where a field force of officers in here, about 40 additional officers, especially throughout the weekend. So you're going to see a lot of police personnel in here, and some cops you will not see also as well. We have some of our plainclothes officers that are going to be tasked to conduct vending operations in the park, and they're also looking out for crime too. Yeah.
Ask about the officer on security detail. Let's just stay on topic for now.
Yes. Hi. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
What is the specific regulation with respect to these pedicabs? Because if you go to Central Park South, for example, by 6th Avenue, it can be overwhelming where they're blasting their music, cutting people off. What is the regulation regarding that, and how is that specifically being addressed?
Well, one thing for sure, and we'll talk about some of the enforcement, it's not a petty concern, that's for sure. You know, we are really concerned with the overproliferation of pedicabs, that many of them are unlicensed. They're overcharging tourists. Some of the cases that we've heard are really astonishing when you think about people coming here to visit the city. They don't want to be ripped off and harassed in a manner. And so we did several operations. You want to talk about those operations?
Thanks, NJ. And that's one of the biggest concerns here in Central Park is the pedicabs. They're out of control. Last year we did a really big pedicab initiative through Midtown, as well as even down in Central Park. But pedicab is just what it is, a pedicab. If you notice, some of these pedicabs, majority of them have motors on them. They're not supposed to have motors. And their prices are very deceiving to New Yorkers, especially tourists, when, you know, I'm coming here from a different country because this is the best place in the world. when they jump on a ride, it says $8.99. People think it is $8.99 per minute, but they're charging you $8.99 per person. So a ride around Central Park can cost a person almost $200, and that gets into a conflict between the rider, the ride goer, and the pedicab operator. So when the officers come in and converge on them, initially they try to take plan in place for how we go after these individuals. But if you see a pedicab with a motor on it, if you don't see the license sticker on the side by the Consumer Worker Protection Program, they're supposed to be registered. And I would say about 95% of these pedicabs are not registered; they're not licensed. So it's an easy confiscation. We're working with our law department to see of ways of how we can take these pedicabs legally and lawfully and not give them back to the owner, because we only can have them seasoned for a couple of days. So we're working with our legal teams, our law department, to come up with some sort of resolution so we can actually take these pedicabs permanently if they don't come pick them up.
What about the music?
The music is also, you're supposed to have a sound reproductive device. They don't. I'm sure they don't go to the precinct to get one, right? No. So listen, the pedicabs are fun for attractive for people that are not from here. But sometimes they do take advantage of our tourists, and we don't want that. We want people to come here, have a good time. We don't want them to get into altercations with the pedicab drivers over a $250 fare, which is sometimes absurd. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks all. Good job.
That, of course, was New York Mayor Eric Adams talking about public safety, New York's Central Park, also addressing issues of loud music and pedicabs and how those can often be overwhelming to those who are visiting the city of New York for the first time. Not sure if they should pay it, if they should not pay it, particularly those who are coming in internationally. Officials even citing instances where some have been charged as much as $300 for a ride around Central Park. Yeah. So those are just part of the small crimes that he says affects overall the experience in New York. You're watching News Nation Streaming. I'm Nick Smith. We're keeping an eye on a number of things, including the first public appearance by former President Joe Biden. He's preparing to speak at an event in Delaware, and this will be the first time we've seen him make public remarks since the announcement of his cancer diagnosis. We'll take a short break. We'll be right back and see where we are when that event begins. We'll take you there live. You're watching News Nation Streaming. I'm Nick Smith. Welcome back to News Nation Now Streaming. I'm Nick Smith. Former President Joe Biden will be speaking at his first public appearance and remarks since the office announced he was diagnosed with an aggressive form of prostate cancer. His cancer was categorized as having a Gleason score of 9, which places him in grade group 5, the most severe category. Former President Biden expected to make remarks at the annual memorial event at Veterans Memorial Park in Newcastle, Delaware, just south of his hometown of Wilmington. We can see that the former president has arrived at the venue, and it looks as though he may be stepping to the lectern soon. After an introduction from former Delaware Senator Tom Carper. The event is hosted by the Delaware Commission of Veterans Affairs, the Delaware Office of Veteran Services, and the Delaware River and Bay Authority. Let's take you there live now.
When recognized, the 46th President of the United States, the Honorable Joseph R. Biden. Acknowledgements from our Honorable Governor, Matthew Myers, during his absence and his regret. The Honorable Lieutenant Governor Carl Evans Gay. The Honorable U.S. Senator Lisa Blunt Rochester. The Honorable U.S. Representative Sarah McBride. The Honorable former U.S. Senator Tom Carper. The Honorable Secretary of State Patabanda Sanchez. The Honorable Delaware Attorney General Kathleen Jennings. The Honorable Insurance Commissioner Trinidad Navarro. The Honorable Delaware Auditor of Accounts Lydia York. Adjutant Major General James Benson. President pro tempore of the Delaware State Senate, Senator Dave Scola. State Representative and Chair of the House of Veterans Affairs Committee, nominee Chupoka. Representatives and Senators of the Delaware General Assembly. Executive Director of the Delaware River and Bay Authority, Tom Cook. Executive Director of the Wilmington VA Medical Center, Vamiz. Acting Director of the Office of Veterans Services, Dennis Linden. Delaware Commissioner of Veterans Affairs. I have to my left my Vice Chair, Doug Hudson. Also, Commissioner McGuire, Commissioner Rambo, Commissioner Espino, Commissioner Schroeder, and Commissioner Harwood. I don't see it. Okay. The Delaware River and Bay Authority Commissioners. And last but not least, our Gold Star families. We extend Our thanks to all other officials, service members, veteran service organizations, family members, and all veterans in attendance who were not formally recognized. It is now time for our Memorial Day messages. At this time, please welcome former U.S. Senator Tom Carper.
Good morning. How are you doing? Great to be with all of you today. Martha and I are delighted that you're here. We're delighted that we are here. We've been coming here for some of us. Been coming here for quite a while, Mr. President, and it's glad we're able to make it, and delighted that you're all able to make it as well. To all of our elected officials that lead our state, our county, help lead our country. Lisa Blunt Rochester, whose office is in 513 Hart, my old office in the United States. Her office. She sits at my old desk, and it looks a lot better. I must say, but it's great to be here with all of you. I want to start off with some thank yous, if I may. I want to thank the people of Delaware for welcoming me here. Gosh, over 50 years ago, I'd been a naval flight officer in the Vietnam War, 3 tours, and came back home to the U.S. and made my way to Delaware. And got an MBA at the University of Delaware. Thank God for the GI Bill. Anybody here use the GI Bill? Anybody here use the GI Bill? Let's hear it for the GI Bill. This guy right up here probably did more than anybody I know to make sure we have a terrific GI Bill. But thank you for that GI Bill. Thank you for giving me the privilege to serve as your state treasurer, as your congressman, as your governor, and as your United States senator. What a privilege it has been. I want to. My job is to sort of like to introduce the 46th president of the United States. Ever try to introduce somebody that doesn't need an introduction? Well, at this audience with these people and all of you here today, this particular fellow doesn't need an introduction. My guess is that all of us could come up here and everybody could help give that introduction, but I think it falls on me to do that today. Before I do that, I want to take a minute, if I can, and share with you, not everybody knows how we ended up with Memorial Day. In fact, my guess is most of us don't. And I'm just going to take, before I introduce President Biden, I'm going to take just a minute or two and just kind of tell us where Memorial Day came from. How do we end up with Memorial Day in this country? A fellow named Frederick Douglass, one of the early giants in the history of our country, believed that Decoration Day, some of you may remember Decoration Day, which was the original name for Memorial Day, was our nation's most significant holiday. On May 30th, 1871, the 4th annual observance of Decoration Day, he honored the unknown Union soldiers at Arlington National Cemetery who died in the Civil War. Douglass spoke that day of his concern that with the passage of time, the lives of 400,000 Union soldiers who died in that war, and even the meaning of the war itself, might be forgotten. He asked that day a question. He said, what should we remember them for? He asked that question not once but twice. What should we remember them for? And then he answered his own question. He replied, not once but twice. They died for their country. They died for their country. In truth, they fought to end the tyranny of slavery and to build a nation that embodied hope, of freedom, and self-government throughout the world. Douglass devoted the remainder of his time to ensuring that these men did not die in vain. Gradually, Decoration Day assumed a lasting place in the calendar of national celebrations in America. In 1890, all of the United States had officially adopted it, and in the aftermath of World War I, it came to encompass the dead of all American wars. In 1967, Congress changed the name of this holiday to Memorial Day, 1967. They moved its day from May 30th to the last Monday in the month of May. And Memorial Day came to be celebrated by many as it came to be celebrated as the start of summer, and came to be celebrated as a holiday to spend at the beach, rather than to reflect on history or decorate the graves or honor the dead. If Douglas were alive today, he would probably be shocked, maybe appalled, by the distinction and rancor that characterizes so much of the public discourse that takes place in our nation's capital and across America. Most likely, he would stop and remind us to lower our voices and listen instead to the voices of those who laid down their lives so that we might have a better life. The sacrifice of those who have served us in uniform literally did save our nation. They literally did save our union. And by our presence here today and in countless other gatherings across America, we make clear that we still understand and embrace that truth. And now for a few words about our 46th President of the United States, Delaware's Joe Biden. And again, many people in the audience they could stand up here and do this by heart. And we know him for so long and so well. So I'm not going to dwell at bio. But I do want to tell you three really quick stories that I think say a lot more about him than any recitation of his bio. First of all, a bipartisan infrastructure bill. Joe Biden had been president for like a week. And he called me on the phone in Washington and said, Tommy, I want you to come over to my office. I want you to come over to my office this week in the Oval Office, and I want you to bring a couple of Democrats, a couple of Republicans from your Committee on Environment and Public Works, and I want us to figure out how we're going to not just talk about an infrastructure bill, an infrastructure program for our country, but actually build one. And 6 days later, I was in his office, and I had with me Shelley Capito, Republican from West Virginia, and several others, Ben Cardin from Maryland, and others. And we sat there with the president. And I'll never forget that day. My guess is you won't either, Mr. President. And what he said to us that day is, he said, we got to stop just talking about rebuilding our infrastructure, our roads, our highways, our bridges, our airports, our railroads, ports. We got to actually do it. And he said, I want you to, looking at us as served on the Environment and Public Works, I want you to report out a committee, a bill by Memorial Day. I want you to report out to the Senate a bill by Memorial Day. And we said, yes, sir. And we talked for it a little bit longer and then left. And I remember standing outside your office, and someone said to me, who's going to do this? And I said, we are. By the end of that summer, we actually took up on the Senate floor and the House floor the biggest infrastructure bill ever in the history of the history of our country. And before Thanksgiving, President Joe Biden put his name on that legislation, and we were off and running. But it took his leadership, his insistence that we have not just Democrats in the room, but Republicans as well, not just the House, but the Senate. And that's what we did. And it led us to the biggest infrastructure bill ever and helped launch one of the strongest economic recoveries in the history of our country. That's one story I wanted to share with you. Another story I want to share with you deals with Ukraine. Anybody here ever been to Ukraine? I know some have. Some have actually been to Ukraine. And President Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, wonderful human being, was speaking a couple of months ago to a combined session of the Senate. And we all gathered in the old Senate chamber, and it's really packed, really crowded, and President Zelensky was introduced. And I sat in the audience, like right where you're sitting, that far away, and he was up here, was introduced to speak and spoke. I was wearing that day, as I am today, a lapel pin that combines the U.S. flag and the Ukrainian flag. And I noticed in the course of his remarks, his eyes kept coming back to my lapel pin, my flag pin. And when he finished speaking, huge audience, Democrats, Republicans on the House and Senate, and a great applause. I thought it would never end. And when he finished, the event finished, he didn't just leave. He literally walked over to where I was standing. And I stood up, and I said, Mr. President, you are a hero. To President Zelensky, I said, you are a hero. He took his hand, I'll never forget it. He put it right on this lapel pin that has the Ukrainian flag and the American flag. He put it right there. And he said, no, he said, you are our heroes. And he said, and President Biden is the biggest hero of them all. We in the Ukraine, we love him, we love him, we love him. One last quick story, and I'll pass the baton. Martha and I have a couple of boys, and the youngest one is Ben. We grew up in public schools here in Delaware and turned out pretty well. And Ben got in, couldn't get it. He was waitlisted at the University of Delaware. That's a joke. But he ended up getting into William and Mary. And we were driving down to William and Mary to help him move into his dorm as a freshman at William and Mary. And as we're driving down with the car that day with Ben and Martha and myself, I don't think Christopher was with us that day, but we're driving down and the phone rang. And it was a time when Barack Obama was the nominee, going to be the nominee of the Democrats for president, and he was trying to figure out who to make his running mate. And there was a lot of speculation that it might be Evan Bayh, it might be this person, it might be Joe Biden. And we were expected to hear, literally that day, it was a Saturday, we were literally expected to hear that day who Barack was going to choose as his running mate. And the phone rang, and on the phone was Joe Biden. And I said to him, I said, are you going to be the vice president? He said, no, I'm not calling about that. I said, well, what are you calling about? He said, I called to talk to Ben. Really? Ben, who was just graduating from high school and just starting college and moving into his dorm for the first time. He said, I'm calling to talk to Ben. I said, Ben Carper? And he said, yes, put him on the phone. So I put him on the phone, and as it turned out, Joe Biden wasn't calling to say that he had made the list, he was going to be the vice presidential candidate, or he wasn't, or was going to fight. We'll find out the next day. He was calling to talk to Ben Carper, as Ben was ready to set off in his next adventure to be a freshman and later on to go off to do amazing things with his life. I thought to myself, how many sitting senators who are going to someday be vice president and president would call and ask to talk to Ben Carper or any Ben or any other kid who's going to college, just to give them advice and wish them well. And I will never forget that. I will never forget that. And I would just suggest if that were your kid, your son or daughter, you would not forget it either. Let me maybe do one more thing if I can. Someone gave me, Joe, I don't know if, maybe it was Hunter over here gave it to me, but gave me some words that said, whatever you say, don't forget to say this about Joe Biden. A visionary, a respected leader around the world, a compassionate man who is interested in everyday people. All right. I think, Martha, what did I forget? Nothing? All right, ladies and gentlemen, I think that's it for me. And with that, with me, where's Ronnie? Ronnie? Where's Ronnie? Ronnie, where are you, buddy? All right. Is this the time to introduce the 46th President of the United States, Delaware's Joe Biden? Let's hear it on your feet. Let me hear you. Put it on you. Woo! Glad you're home. Thank you. No, come on. You can do better than that. Go on. Knock it out of the park.
Thank you very much. The greatest honor of my life has been for 4 years in the United States. The fact is that I don't think if I had come from any other state that would have happened. But in Delaware, everybody knows everybody. And it's important. It's important because, you know, we had that expression for the longest time. We do things the Delaware way. The Delaware way. Members of the House and Senate know, Democrat or Republican. They've learned to work together for the benefit of Delaware. Now remember, Tommy, we've been coming here for decades. First time I was here, I was reminded of that quote from R.G. Ingersoll, who said, "When the will defies fear, when duty throws the gauntlet down to fate, when they shun compromise with death, that's heroism." I remember thinking that day, the first time. Thinking about my uncles in World War II, thinking about all the people who had laid down their lives. And ladies and gentlemen, it's good to be with so many friends on this solemn occasion. Tommy, Kyle, Lisa, Sarah, Nolan, and you're all outstanding leaders and proud Delawareans. And Chaplain, thank you for your invocation. And I want to acknowledge the keynote speaker today, a pathbreaker and a patriot, Chief Warrant Officer Ernestine Epps. Ernestine, thank you. Thank you for being willing to do this. I'm looking forward to hearing you. Folks, every year we come together to remember the brave women and men who gave their all for this nation, or as Lincoln called it, the last full measure of devotion. That's what it was, the last full measure of devotion. They laid down their lives so we could live our lives in peace, and maybe the most important word, with possibilities. And I know I speak for everyone here, and when I say we remember them every single day, not just this day, but every day, the people assembled under this tent. Remember them every day. We come together to remember the families that are left behind, the hearts that still carry the weight of their absence, the ache that never fully goes away. We come together to remember the debt we owe to the American military. The military is the solid spine, the spine of our nation. Our troops, our veterans, our military families, and our Gold Star families in particular. Only around 1% of all Americans defend 99% of us. 1%. Just 1% of Americans risk the ultimate sacrifice. Send into harm's way and care for them when their families when they come home and when they don't come home. It's a sacred obligation. I know for many of you, Memorial Day, like for us, is deeply personal. For the Bidens, this day is the 10th anniversary of the loss of my son, Bo, who spent a year in Iraq. And to be honest, it's a hard day. His son and I, Hunter, who's here in the crowd, I don't know where you're sitting, Hunter, but all the way in the back there. His daddy came to this event with me about the same age when he started. He just graduated from high school, heading off to college. And you know, it's being with all of you, but quite frankly makes things a little bit easier. It really does. So thank you for allowing me to grieve with you. Some of you knew my son, Bo. He served in the Delaware National Guard, including a year in Iraq. Remember, I got a phone call. I was in Washington. Dad, what are you doing Friday? I said, what do you need? And he said, I want you to pin my bars on. I said, pin your bars on? You have 2 kids. Dad, somebody's got to do this, Dad. Proudest day of his life was putting that uniform on. That's not a joke. That's not hyperbole. That's real. And you know, it's one of the proudest things I ever did, pinning his bars on him. And it means so much to our family at the headquarters of the Delaware National Guard has been renamed after Bo. His legacy lives on. His children, his grandchildren, his great-grandchildren, like those you lost, will be remembered. They'll remember who he was. And just like the legacy of all our fallen heroes lives on, they live on in us. And they live on in the strength and freedom of our nation. That sounds like hyperbole, but it's real. It's literal. So everyone who came here today to grieve with grief in your heart, please know you're not alone. You'll never be alone. And your loved one will never be forgotten. Period. My friends, Memorial Day is about something profound. Our politics have become so divided and so bitter. All the years I've been doing this, I never thought we'd get to this point. But we are. Our troops don't wear a uniform that says, I'm a Democrat or I'm a Republican. It says, I'm an American. I'm an American. That's who I am. I'm serious about this. And folks, our politics has become, as I said, so divided. They wear the uniform of the United States of America. The only nation in the world, literally, not free, the only nation in the world founded on an idea. An idea. Every nation was founded on geography, ethnicity, some unifying principle, but not an idea. The idea of America was founded on, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men and women are created equal, endowed by the Creator with certain inalienable rights, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. We mean it. That's who we are. That's what makes America the most unique nation in the world, literally, not figuratively. In fact, folks, you know, for generation after generation, the profound idea has been defended by ordinary citizens who stepped up and answered the call. Because of them, American democracy has endured for nearly 250 years. Every generation has to fight to maintain that democracy. Every time, every generation. Because of them, our government is still of the people, by the people, and for the people. They are we, and we are still free. And now, we must make sure that sacrifice has never been in vain. Let me close with this. The women and men we honor today are no longer with us, but you can still hear their echoes. Literally, can't you, if you lost anybody? You can hear their echoes. The echoes of their voices. They're asking, what will we do? We who are alive, we who remain. They're not asking us to risk our lives. They're asking us to stay true to what America stands for. They're not asking us to do their jobs. They're asking us to do our job, to protect our nation in our time, now, to defend democracy, be part of something bigger than ourselves. So today, let's renew our pledge to honor our heroes. I mean this sincerely. Renew our pledge to honor our heroes. Think of what they did. Think what they'd be doing if they were standing here today with us. Not only with our words, with our deeds. To care for their families. To support our veterans. With more, not less. I get really angry when I hear about veterans are seeking too much. They're not enough. That's why I wrote the legislation relating to Gold Star families and the rest. It's an obligation we have. It's a matter of honor. Honor. Ladies and gentlemen, to make sure our democracy always lives up to their bravery. To their bravery. And I want to thank you very much, and I want to recognize the guy who's brand new to all this. He's only a little over 100 years old. But I tell you what, man, every time I come, I love seeing him because he always pats me on the face and gives me a kiss. Sir, thank you for all you've done. Your generation and every generation since then. And folks, and I want to say this from the bottom of my heart. Thank you, particularly to the Gold Star families. Thank you, thank you, thank you. The country owes you. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Carper and President Biden. At this time, please welcome Lieutenant Governor Kyle Evans-Gay.
Thank you, sir. Well, good morning, and I just, not scripted, we all are so pleased to have you here, sir, and for your sacrifice in serving all of those years in public service, for everything you have accomplished on our behalf, and for never giving up on Delaware, our nation, so thank you. It is an absolute honor to be assembled here with you today, in particular to our commission, all of our honored members, my state colleagues, and members of the General Assembly, in particular to those who are serving on our Joint Finance Committee and who could not be here today. I know they are with us in spirit doing the good work that we do every day. And to many who are gathered here today, welcome back. This ceremony of remembrance has been for us, for many of us, an important annual touch point. A time and a place to remember, yes, but also to rededicate, refocus, recommit to the work that we do every day, with the humble hope that it honors the sacrifices of those who have given everything so that we may be free. For those joining us for the first time, welcome, and we hope to see you back. May you too become connected to this place, to this community, and to our shared obligation and pledge to be good and true stewards of this republic for whom some gave all. To our active military members here today and to our veterans, thank you. We know that as we honor our fallen today, the sacrifices of service are manyfold, and that the loss of those who you served with, who you protected, and who protected you creates invisible chasms that can be difficult to describe or explain to anyone who has not walked in your shoes. Your dedication to remembering our fallen is a constant reminder that we all must never forget. And to our Gold Star mothers and families, it's hard to find the words. So instead, I'd like to share with you a brief story that better explains how I feel today. Last weekend, I was standing with Judy at our Delaware Veterans Memorial Cemetery in Bear. A young group of scouts came up to us and introduced themselves. One noticed Judy's name tag and asked if she worked for the government. No, she explained, I'm here because I lost my son, who served our country with honor. And then, without hesitation, these young men, boys really, surrounded Judy and they hugged her. Well, we're all those scouts today, and we are surrounding you with the love that you deserve. We stand with you today and every day. Because even when Memorial Day ceremonies conclude, our duty to the fallen does not. We continue honoring them by telling their stories, teaching their values, and upholding the promises they fought so hard to protect. President John F. Kennedy once said, as we express our gratitude, we must never forget that the highest appreciation is not to utter the words, but to live by them. We honor our fallen by living lives worthy of their sacrifice, striving to uphold the standard of service they set in the roles we are privileged to hold. And we honor the fallen by telling their stories. These past few weeks, as my children have been counting down the final days until summer arrives, they have also noticed the fields of flags as I shuttle them from one activity to the next. Questions about those fields have given me the opportunity to be that storyteller, to sustain the memories of those we have lost, and to honor the service of those I know and love. To tell them about their uncles and their grandfather who enlisted in the armed services as young men, only to return aged beyond their years. To share the honor I felt as a young attorney, walking alongside an attorney general who not only served our country, but whose work and advocacy protected children here at home. To bring them to places like this memorial, to read the names on the walls behind us so that they can begin to understand the gravity of all that has been sacrificed. This solemn day is a powerful reminder that freedom has a hefty cost. Let us all commit to telling the stories, to showing our gratitude, and to living lives worthy of the sacrifices that have been made. Thank you.
Thank you. I need to, I guess, backtrack. When I was mentioning our representatives, I left out one person, and that is the mayor of Wilmington, John Carney. All gave some, and some gave all. At this time, I lost my thought. Sorry to my heart. At this time, I'm going to introduce our next speaker, Senator Lisa Blunt Rochester.
Thank you, Commissioner Lewis. Someone just said, let me be blunt. I heard you. Protocol having been established, I want to start off by thanking the Delaware Commission of Veterans Affairs, the Delaware River and Bay Authority, and the Delaware Office of Veterans Services for again hosting an incredible event. Today is even more special. The speeches that we have heard, the presence of all of you, it is truly an honor to be here. And I also want to extend my deep gratitude to President Joe Biden for your years of service, and especially for being here on a day that I know is so important to you and your family, and to have your grandson Hunt here as well, Bo's son. One of the things that was not mentioned is your commitment in ensuring that the PAC Act, like not just thinking about veterans, but living up to the ideals, the promises that we made. And Senator Carper, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was one of the largest investments ever made for our veterans. And so please, the PAC Act, this president did that. President Joe Biden, along with the House and the Senate. And I'm also pleased to join my predecessor and my good friend, Senator Tom Carper. I'm glad you started off with Frederick Douglass and Decoration Day, because I think a lot of times we do things routinely, but we don't really know why we did them. And so to remind us that it was at a time when our country was tearing apart, that for our veterans we came together. And so thank you so much for your service. To our Lieutenant Governor, Kyle, what a beautiful, beautiful tribute you gave as well in representing our governor and our state. And to all of the incredible elected officials, I'm proud to be here with our Congresswoman Sarah McBride, and also representing Senator Chris Coons in his absence as well. Thank you to all of the leaders of our state, all of the veterans, the service members, the families, and our community at large. Thank you for joining us. I am reminded that soon we will celebrate the 250th anniversary of our country. 250 years. 250 years. Memorial Day calls to us. It calls upon us to remember those who fought for liberty, for freedom, and for justice, and for what it means. It is a day to recommit to those values and to pledge ourselves to service in the memory of those who gave all. Memorial Day is also a day of reflection, and it's also a day of gratitude to the families, especially the Gold Star families. Gratitude for those who paid the ultimate sacrifice. And today we know there are so many stories up and down this state throughout the years, the 250 years. Whether it is Private First Class Frank J. Cox, a Wilmington resident who lost his life in 1943 during the invasion of mainland Italy in World War II, or SP5 Richard Dennison of Sussex County, who lost his life in 1971 when a Chinook collided with a Republic of Korea plane in Vietnam. Like Matthew Flacco, a Newark resident and a Navy soldier specializing in weather for the Department of Defense, who lost his life on September 11th during the attack on the Pentagon. And like Elizabeth Lockney, a Newcastle resident and graduate of the Naval Tech Explosive Ordnance Disposal School. Remember Elizabeth. Many of you remember it was in 2007 when a car bombing, 20 days before she was meant to come home, she perished in a tour in Iraq. We hold Frank and Richard and Matthew and all of those who gave their lives in service in our hearts today, and the countless stories up and down this state. We hold our Gold Star families, our Gold Star mothers in our hearts, the mothers, the fathers, the husbands, wives, daughters, sons, friends, who gave their lives for the sake of liberty and freedom. We give you our thanks. We give you our love. I also give the Biden family our love on the loss of one of the most beautiful and brilliant service members and public servants in this state. I remember as I was, after I lost my husband, Bo called me in the hospital. The president called me in the hospital. And I know President Biden says this to families like he said to me, that there will come a time when the mention of the person's name will bring a smile to your face before it brings a tear to your eye. We thank you. We thank Bo. We thank your family. I began by talking about the fraying and the tearing of a country. Well, the very fabric of America is stitched together by the men and women who made the ultimate sacrifice to protect our homeland. Every state, yes, the very fabric, every state, county, and community across our great nation is made safer by their sacrifice and by the freedoms they fought for. And those freedoms extend not just to America, but around the world. So on this Memorial Day, as we put our hand on our heart, or as we salute these decorations, let us remember, let us reflect, and let us recommit to living the legacy that they leave behind. Thank you.
We've been listening to remarks from former President Joe Biden making his first public appearance since his office announced he was diagnosed with an aggressive form of prostate cancer. His cancer was categorized as having a Gleason score of 9, which places him in grade group 5, the most severe category. Former President Biden attending the annual Memorial Day event at Veterans Memorial Park in Newcastle, Delaware, just south of his hometown. The event is hosted by the Delaware Commission of Veterans Affairs, the Delaware Offices of Veteran Services, and the Delaware River and Bay Authority. We will continue to monitor this, but right now we're going to take a short break because there are other things that we're keeping an eye on too. Top of mind is that of Todd and Julie Chrisley, USA Network reality show Chrisley Knows Best. Well, they were freed from prison Wednesday following pardons from President Donald Trump. Convicted of bank and tax fraud in 2022, Todd Chrisley was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison, while Julie Chrisley received 7 years. Well, they're free and they're expected to speak to the media today, and of course, our NewsNation cameras are there. When that happens, I will take you there live. But right now, I'm going to give you a chance to grab another cup of coffee and join me back here for NewsNation Streaming. I'm Nick Smith. Let's take a short break. We'll be right back. Welcome back to NewsNation Streaming. I'm Nick Smith. In the corner of your screen there, you see Congresswoman Sarah McBride speaking. I'm going to take you back to that ceremony, but know that in just a few minutes, we're expected to see Todd and Julie Chrisley, stars of the USA Network reality show Chrisley Knows Best. They were free from prison Wednesday. Today will be their first public remarks. I will return now to Delaware, where Joe Biden is being recognized at a veterans service outside of Delaware. Let's go there live.
We have a larger percentage of veterans in Delaware than many other states. Because of the valor of the service members, the veterans, our National Guard that is on full display here in Delaware and across the country. Because of the solemn responsibilities that our service members of the Dover Air Force Base perform all too often with the dignified transfer. Delaware understands that service and sacrifice better than most. And it is why all of us are here. Because that service here in Delaware, it runs deep. And it runs through every single person who is here who served their nation. Individuals like retired Lieutenant Ray Fermani, someone who I first met through General Vavala. Ray, your presence here is more than just symbolic. It is living history. And it reminds us of a truth that we cannot forget as we gather here at Memorial Day, to honor those who gave their last full measure of devotion to this nation. You remind us that our freedom is not free. Your service was in defense of democracy. It was in defense of the values that make this nation great. And as we lose more and more of the greatest generation, as those with a living memory of the lessons learned as you took on tyranny and defended democracy for the 20th century. You remind us that history is not cumulative. Like freedom, it's not something that we inherit passively. It's something we must actively learn and protect and pass forward. It's our job in this moment to learn from you, Ray, to learn from those remaining members of the greatest generation, the lessons that they fought for and in many cases died for. It's the lessons of veterans, the tolls of war, and the urgency for peace and democracy that we inherit and we must live and embody every day. And that's what Memorial Day demands of every elected official here. For decades, Senator Tom Carper made Delaware's veterans a cornerstone of his public service. He did it not only because of his experience.
I'm going to interrupt this right now and take you to the White House, where Stephen Miller has just stepped to the microphones before reporters. We want to hear what he has to say, so I'm going to take you there live.
But more specifically, it's the program, this is a very important point, because this context is often missing. It's the program that was launched by the Biden administration to fly illegal aliens into the country by aircraft. So when you hear about migrant flights, when you hear about illegal aliens being flown into the country, there were other programs too. They had a flying program, they had a free transportation program for hundreds of thousands of illegals at the border that was run out of DHS and funded by FEMA. They had a separate program for UAC, unaccompanied alien children. But when you think about mostly when people are talking about the migrant flights, they're talking about this program, the fly-ins for these illegal aliens. About 500,000 illegal aliens from those four countries, particularly in the last 2 years of the Biden administration, were flown directly into American cities and towns. So, of course, we revoked those, they called it parole for those individuals, amnesty basically. And now, of course, they're all subject to deportation from the United States. And, of course, self-evidently, of course, they have to be deported. You can't have a situation where the Biden administration can fly in 500,000 illegal aliens in the last 24 months, and we're having a conversation about, oh, maybe they should get to stay for life. They've been here for 24 months. They were flown into our country illegally, and the good news is the airplanes travel in two directions. Next question. It's a great question and a very valid question. I'm going to let the USTR, the trade rep, Jameson Greer, as well as Secretary of Commerce and Secretary Lutnick, provide more detail on that. I know that's not exactly the answer that you want, but I will speak at a high level to the fact that China has abrogated the agreement. The United States acted immediately and in good faith, as of course you all saw, with the proclamation adjusting the tariff rate. China did not fulfill the obligations that it made and committed to with the United States. And so that opens up all manner of action for the United States to ensure future compliance. It remains the President's hope and desire that China will choose the path of cooperation, of common ground, and that we can open up China to American business, just in the same way that America, of course, as we all know, has been open to Chinese business for a very long time now. And so hopefully China will choose the path, to use a very common bureaucratic phrase, of rules-based conduct, not a phrase I often use, but it applies here, and follow the agreement that they reached. Next question.
How quickly must China respond? How quickly must China respond to the President's demands and some actions?
Yeah, well, again, as I mentioned, China often says that it believes in the exact phrase of the rules-based. We've all heard that phrase from China over and over again. This is the chance to show it's serious about upholding that commitment to the rules-based international order. And as soon as possible is the best answer I can give you. We want to see them comply with their agreements with the United States and fulfill their obligations so that we can have, again, a relationship that is cooperative and that is constructive, which is what...
More information about the person who was impersonating investigating that.
I don't have any information on that. I apologize. Yes. Well, there are examples, for example, in Brazil of fairly significant restrictions that have been imposed on the free speech rights of Americans. But just as a general matter, this represents the United States' continued commitment to restoring free speech and fighting censorship. It was one of the big issues in the election, and we're going to fulfill and follow through on that commitment.
Can you talk about what...
Well, the State Department is putting that in place right now, so I don't want to get ahead of Secretary Rubio in how exactly that's going to be developed. So details to come. But as a general matter, the policy is going to be that we're not going to be awarding visas to individuals who have a risk of being engaged in any form of malign conduct in the United States, which of course would include espionage, theft of trade secrets, theft of technology, or other actions that would degrade the security of our industrial base. At the same time, there's a deeper issue here too. J.D. Vance has spoken about it as well, about that we don't do enough in this country to reward and celebrate American genius. You know, we in the 20th century, during a period of very low migration, led the modern world in everything: aviation, space flight, technology, national development, medicine, everything, using our own genius here in this country. And so, of course, we want to have an immigration policy that allows, just as we did during the World War II era, people have specialized knowledge to be able to contribute to our national economic security. What we can't do is have a system that deprives Americans of an opportunity to contribute to their own country. And we can't have a policy in America where every citizen of this country, whether looking for a job, whether looking for housing, whether they're looking for a government benefit in a time of need, has to compete with all of planet Earth. Because then you're not a nation anymore. At that point, you're just a world economy.
Steve, are you considering taking actions against other universities in addition to Harvard? What does that process look like? Have you been in touch with any of the other schools that will talk about what they need to do to avoid some of the process?
Well, so obviously Harvard has been engaged in the most pernicious conduct of any of the universities. They defied a lawful subpoena from DHS. They're engaged in a pattern and practice of invidious race-based discrimination, illegal gender and sex-based discrimination. They failed to comply with the Supreme Court ruling in Students for Fair Admissions, and just the beginning of the examples of Harvard's perfidy and unlawful conduct. But the administration is, as you know, looking back to our very first executive orders, is going through a compliance process with all of America's institutions of higher learning and K through 12 to ensure rigorous compliance with our nation's civil rights laws, in particular Title VI and VII and Title IX. So that's protections against racial discrimination and protections against sex-based discrimination. And so if a university, for example, is discriminating against white men, or is discriminating against Asians, or is discriminating against Indians, or is discriminating against people for being straight, or is discriminating against, say, a girl or a woman in the K through 12 and a girl, a woman in the collegiate context, for in sports or in access to private facilities, all of that conduct is unlawful, and all of it will have to be addressed with the appropriate remedy.
Does the White House have concern about drug use by universities?
The drugs that we're concerned about are the drugs pouring across the southern border. Next question. Well, as you know, we received an almost immediate stay from the Federal Court of Appeals, and the tariffs are fully in effect. Also, all nations know that the president has vast authority in the trade space given to him by Congress. I mean, these are laws that you all know well, Section 301, Section 232. There are numerous statutes that give the president authority to conduct trade, because trade is a core element of national security and foreign policy. It's why the Congress has given the president those authorities. So nations all around the world understand that they are required to continue these negotiations with the United States in order to avoid tariffs. And they all understand that. Oh, sorry, behind you, yes. There's a question behind you. Yep, sorry. He went like a little bit first, like 5 seconds. Yeah, sorry, go ahead. Now, I don't believe that's true, but even regardless, the reality is that what has been fake for generations now is the medical and nutrition advice that so much of this government has been giving our families. And, we saw, of course, during COVID with like fake rules about from the so-called experts about masking and social distancing and everything else, or pretending that there's the same risk profile for a healthy 4-year-old kid as an elderly and obese person. The Maha report is the most significant and important breakthrough moment in terms of prioritizing prevention, underlying health, answering and asking the right questions. Why are there such persistently high rates of pediatric cancer in this country? And why have they increased so significantly since 1970? Why are pediatric cancer rates so much higher in the developed world than the developing world? Why do you even have a concept called diseases of civilization? I think you've all heard that concept before, right? Where in the most developed countries, you have such high incidences of cancer, of immunological disorders, right? In other words, things like celiac disease, food allergies, eczema, psoriasis, gut disorders. You have so many quality of life disorders that can actually be crippling and debilitating, right? In other words, some of these disorders can completely degrade in the person's entire quality of life permanently with no known cures. They can treat these things with, like Crohn's disease, for example. They can treat these things with steroids. They can try to mitigate the symptoms, but there's no path out for millions of Americans. What is causing young babies in this country to have these crippling allergic reactions or immune systems that don't fire properly? They underreact to certain illnesses. They overreact to other illnesses. And we don't see these same things in the natural. And so the report, which took just such extraordinary courage, and I'm so grateful to Bobby, in talking about the chemical load in our society, the chemical load that a child accrues from the day they're born, in terms of everything they touch and interact with in the world, the complete denuding of our food supply, in other words, the eradication of all living things, all natural things from our food supply in the form of these ultra-processed foods, so that children are living a life where they're not having access to anything natural, they're not having access to anything that's healthy. Everything they do have is loaded up with insane amounts of sugar. For years, I still think it's the case. If you went to like a store and looked at baby food, it's filled with sugar. Why are people putting sugar into baby food? And how many children's snacks, right, are filled with dyes, artificial ingredients, and massive amounts of sugar? What is this doing to a young body from the day they're born? Combined again with all the chemical exposures, the incredibly accelerated growth and compression of the overall vaccine schedule from even when I was a kid. Parents have questions. They want to know, why do their kids have these chronic health conditions? Why do they go to the hospital when they're sick? Instead of just, in other words, they have like a common cold. Why is it sending them to the hospital? Why is their immune system firing wrong? Why is it that that foods that people have eaten for thousands of years are suddenly causing these crippling allergies in children? Why are these high and persistent rates of obesity that has no precedent in history amongst our young people? What are the effects and the cost to our healthcare system over time when you have these high rates of chronic illnesses, heart disease, obesity, lung disease, asthma? Like, what are the effects of these on a society, both financially, personally, quality of life? Why is it that a person from the developing world has a lower cancer rate than an American does? I mean, on average, right? But within a single generation, their family has the exact same cancer rate, likelihood of getting cancer, as the American population. These are
I'm going to take you to Todd and Chrisley, stars of the USA Network reality show Chrisley Knows Best, holding their first.
They were still at home, so it's honestly felt like such a dream to have them at home, and I'm just so grateful, obviously, to President Trump, the administration, Alice Johnson, just everyone within the pardons office. Alice obviously came on my podcast a year and a half ago, I think, before she ever even got the role. And what I respect about her is she's not in the art of giving favors. Neither is President Trump. And when she got the role, she looked into our case. They saw the injustices. The media loves to run with this $30 million scheme without doing the research to look into the documents. And there was no $30 million scheme. But I just appreciate the administration looking into it and seeing the faults within our case, the corruption, and just the weaponization of the DOJ. So we are just so excited and moving forward. Obviously, getting them home the past 2.5 years, I have fought. Like, that was my #1 priority, was getting my parents home. But now that they're home, now we move on to all the other men and women that are in the system and getting them home. And I know we're going to continue to work. We're going to be in D.C., and Mom and Dad are now along for the ride. We're not leaving those men and women behind. There's too much work that needs to be done. There's too much reform that needs to be done. So we're just super excited, and here he is, Todd Chrisley, after running from, the media in Nordstrom yesterday.
Good morning, guys. Thank you all very much for coming today, for having the interest. I want to thank first and foremost my Lord and Savior, because that's who got me through it. I want to thank President Trump. I want to thank the administration. I want to thank Alice Johnson. I want to thank every person that has prayed for us, that has stayed in the fight and that fought for the truth to come out. And so I am grateful for it. And as Savannah said, she has fought a long fight. And for any parent to see their child fight this hard, it's a double-edged sword. It's a blessing, and then your heart breaks because your child has been placed in that position to fight for you, when as a parent you're supposed to fight for your children. So I will always be grateful to you from the bottom of my heart. We've had wonderful legal representation, maybe not the first go-round, but certainly when you picked up. And we're certainly grateful to you, Alex, and to you. This is the better-looking version of our team. So, we're grateful for everything that has happened thus far, and as bad as this experience has been, there's also been a lot of blessings to come from it. I have listened to some horrific stories about things that have gone on in our system. And whether you believe it or not, because I was you at some point, even though this pardon has happened, I still was convicted of something that I did not do. It could be you. It could be you. It could be any of you. And somewhere in this room, someone has had a family member that has been affected by this system. So I understand the shame that's around it, but I refuse to feed into that, because shame is like a cancer that just spreads, and I have no shame. So I will continue to fight for all of the guys that I dealt with and that I was blessed to be with at FPC Pensacola. I will continue to expose the injustices that go on there and throughout the Department and throughout the Bureau of Prisons. I know that Julie, who is a wonderful, decent, God-fearing woman, and that I am blessed to have been married to and been with for over 30 years now, an excellent mother. She's at home with Chloe right now, and Chloe will not let her go. So we're blessed to have our family back, and we're blessed to be coming back to television, because we do have a much bigger story to tell now than we ever have. So I thank each and every one of you.
We're happy to open this up for some questions. I'll start here.
Todd and Savannah, what was the reunion like first night, right? Todd, Julie, family, and the second part of that is, Todd, the fans have been really talking about your physical transformation.
Yeah, I call it the BOP glow.
And so, what was the motivation behind that, and how are you going to continue that sort of fitness routine moving forward?
Well, I'll actually have more access to better products now that I'm out. I think that I had nothing to do other than to read and to work out. And so I worked out every morning at 10:45 until 12 with my buddies there, and I read, and my walk with Christ became deeper. And I talked to my daughter every day, to Chase, to Grayson, and then I was able to email with Julie every day. And so I think that for me, I haven't had the same effects that so many people leaving the prison system have had. So I'm grateful for that. Or maybe it's just all the residual Botox that never wore off.
What was the reunion like, though, first night?
Yes, I think for me, obviously I went to pick up my dad. And when he walked out, it was just such an overwhelming feeling, because the last time I was there, I was dropping him off and watching him walk away. So I think watching him walk towards me, I was an absolute disaster. And we left there, and it was amazing. And I FaceTimed my friend Margot, who works within the administration, and she goes, "Hold on a second." She was like, "I'm here with the president." And we got to FaceTime the president, and it was a full circle moment.
I think that it was, you know, as Savannah said, she and Nick dropped me off there, and then you picked me up. It was, I don't even know that I felt like that it was real at that moment. And I woke up the first morning, and I was looking around, I'm like, this is really real. I'm home. So I was grateful for our family to be all back in the same room, to be together, to share a meal together, to pray together, and to know that we're still in the fight together.
Question second row.
Mr. Chrisley, do you have any remorse for the actions that led to your convictions?
Oh, you must be CNN. Do I have any remorse? I would have remorse if it was something that I did.
Well, your wife did apologize last year in February.
Well, let me explain to you how that works. You're placed in a position as a defendant to either bow down and kiss the ass of the Department of Justice and accept responsibility for things that you did not do in order to avoid a stronger sentence. And the corruption that went on in our case is going to continue to unfold, and Alex is going to continue to give each and every one of you the evidence that as it comes in. Next question.
I haven't seen your wife in so long. Hearing her voice, seeing her, what was that like?
It was overwhelming. It was overwhelming. Julie and I have been together for over 30 years, and she is my best friend. We have raised our children together. The grandchild is now my legal daughter. And we've had all the ups and downs. You know, we've gone through breast cancer together. We've gone through multiple medical procedures with her. And it was great to be home. No matter where that is, as long as she's there, it's home.
That question up here.
Hey guys, well, welcome home, Todd.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I know this has been a big journey for you and for you, Savannah. What is one thing that happened behind the scenes that maybe you want the public to know and to understand?
You want to go first?
I think, you know, obviously the biggest misconception right now is that I either paid for a pardon or slept for a pardon.
That's something I
like, that's the biggest misconception right now. And if people knew the countless hours and the money and the time that I spent going to D.C., literally with not a meeting scheduled, and I just got on a plane and went and said, I'm going to be in the right room at the right time and meet the right people. I fought hard and I was exhausted, and I begged for meetings. There was nothing that I was never too good to ask. And that's the thing, is people think, oh, you're a celebrity, you're white, you have money, that we got an upper hand, and we didn't. I had to fight, and I was relentless, and that's how it happened. Finally, people listened. So for me, that would be something that people just don't quite understand.
I think for me, watching it all unfold and listening to what she said that was coming up next, and just being consumed with pride while at the same time knowing that this is a long shot, because so many people are told no. And being in the prison system, anyone that says that it's a fair shake, it's not. Because I dealt with young African American males in the prison that I was in that were not treated the same. They were denied programming. They were denied access to certain things. I was not denied that, but we know why I wasn't denied that. And so I think that is a much bigger picture that we all as a society as a whole need to look at, that we are one. And whether you're Republican, Democrat, or whatever, at the end of the day, when you're in that hospital, you don't care if it's a Democrat treating you or a Republican. Now, some of you may, but I want whoever's going to be the best person to do that. You.
Thank you. So there's no telling how many times Savannah's Instagram was refreshed yesterday with everyone looking for that glimpse of getting to see Todd. And then the first time we see you live on Instagram is in Nordstrom shopping. Can you talk about that? And were you hesitant at all for that to be the first glimpse of you shopping at Nordstrom?
we thought through our security detail that we had beaten that and that we were good to go. And what we did not realize is that there was multiple outlets that were following us, but we had interference with the security team. And I don't know why it's that exciting to go watch me buy underwear. I mean, it's just not. But we went in to grab a few things because I have an event to go to tomorrow. And then we look up and the people in Nordstrom's coming and said, you need to understand that the press is here, the press is here. And so I'm like, they're just wanting this one first picture. And so I said, go live with it. And I says, and that stops them. And so that's what we did.
Did it work?
It did. Hey.
Go down to the front and in the back. But
what do you have to say to the people who say you're only pardoned because of your status?
I understand it. I understand it. That's not something that you can look at and say, well, that had nothing to do with it. I don't know if it did or if it didn't, because I wasn't involved in the process. But what I can tell you is that I believe in our President of the United States, and I believe in his commitment. When he created the First Step Act, that was to help incarcerated individuals. It was not adhered to by the Department of Justice. And the entire time during the Biden administration, it was not adhered to. So to hear him say that it is now going to be adhered to and Pam Bondi is going to make sure of that, literally since Pam Bondi has stepped in, now the Bureau of Prisons have been given a directive through a new director who I have such a huge amount of faith in, William Marshall, that he is going to make sure that the First Step Act is implemented, and these men and women are going to get the credit that they're supposed to be getting. They're going to get the training and the education that they're promised, and they're going to be given a right to go back to their families in a speedier way. So I do understand that, and if that's the case, I don't know how to address the fact that if it is the case, but I'm grateful to God for whatever reason it was that we were able to obtain it.
Before and first.
Hi. We know you've called the Nashville area home for a few years, having a home in Brentwood, Boney. What's your plans for potentially keeping a life here in Nashville and
We do have future plans. Nashville will always hold a very special place in our heart. But we have other plans.
Do you plan to stay here?
We will probably always have a presence here. I don't know that we'll be here full time.
Back row, please.
No, you.
So after people have been incarcerated, a lot of times they say that isolation and that feeling almost of not being able to associate with family and friends is almost for them feeling like part of a death. And then having them come back is almost like a second chance. Now that you have all this new understanding, these experiences, really having that conversation with people in very different ways of life, how do you plan to use your platform and just share now that you're continuing to have this TV show?
This will always hold this. You can't go through what we've been through and walk away from it. I'm fortunate, so is Julie, that we never lost contact with our children. Julie and I emailed 10 times a day. And I think it's also important to understand that I was at a camp. It was the brokest child camp that you can go to. The accommodations were not great. But it, needless to say, was a camp. It was a former military base. So we had free access to walk, and we had a track and a weight pile, and we had things that we could do. But there are men there that after, I think statistically, after the first 2 years, people lose contact with their loved ones. And that I can't even imagine how that must feel, but at the same time, I think that we at this point, God has said, when you know better, you do better. And it's our job at this point to expose all of that and to try to men and women's lives better if we can. And that's what I plan to do.
So let's take a step back and take a look forward. First of all, what were both of your first reactions to the part where you just shocked? And looking forward, tell us, your return to television, this docuseries. Can you tease what it will be like in nature, what the focus will be? Tell us about that.
I mean, when I got the call, like I said, I was walking into the grocery store and I stopped in the parking lot. I was like, what do I do? I was like, okay, go back to my car. And so I sat in my car and had that phone conversation that's online with President Trump. And I was in such shock. I really didn't know what to say. I started crying. Grayson was with me and we're like, oh my God, it's happening. It's happening. And I really don't even remember driving home. Like, I was in such shock. And I then was able to talk to my parents and tell them what had happened, but it had already kind of spread like wildfire because President Trump's team posted the video and tagged it Trump Knows Best, which, I loved. But it spread like wildfire, and when they called, they're like, is this really real? Oh my, like, it was so hard to believe that it was actually happening.
I had a staff member that came to me and said, you've just been pardoned. And I just looked at him and he says, no, really, you've been pardoned, it's in the news. And so I walked up to call her and she said, it's true, it's true. So I remember walking back from the phone and just feeling numb, not really knowing. And then after about 10 minutes, all I could think about was the guys that I was leaving behind, because I had made such wonderful relationships with those men. And when I left that day, there was only 317 men at our camp, but they were lined up shouting when I was walking out. And they were saying, don't leave it, don't forget us, don't forget us. And my commitment is to them that I will never forget them.
And how about the docuseries?
So we had been filming, and we had just wrapped filming for all intents and purposes, and then we get the call that they had been pardoned, so we picked right back up, and we're excited because I think this new show is going to give, first off, it's going to give people a look into the trial and things that we went through, and we're going to set the record straight, put some documents out there. Alex is on there, but it comes full circle because we go back and then we get to the point where mom and dad are pardoned, and now we move forward with our lives. And I know for me personally, now I get to be a normal 27-year-old, almost 28. And so my goal, it's like we were talking last night, it's like I'm traveling to 30 countries by the time I turn 30. But going to D.C. is going to be, I will be there a lot more, because now I hope to work with the Federal Bureau of Prisons and Billy Marshall and help them expose the corruption, because he has vowed to hold people accountable if there has been abuse and corruption to occur. So I am extremely excited for that, and to work with some organizations, put bills in front of Congress, especially for women who are incarcerated. So that's kind of our goal. And then obviously they've already got all the offers rolling in, so it's going to make life so much easier. You'll see him on quite a few different shows, I have a feeling. So one more question, and then I think
Can Todd confirm that you will be a part now of the second portion of the series?
We are.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, we started filming literally the night that we got home.
As soon as we got home. So I think with this new series, you will see the first time he and mom see each other for the first time.
Last question. Let her have this question.
So I understand you're saying you were wrongfully convicted and that information will come out, but my question is, so, it was under the first Trump administration when the investigation happened and the charges, so how can it be political?
Well, if you will look at the individuals that prosecuted this case and that lied to the courts, and these prosecutors are no longer with the U.S. Attorney's Office. Tommy Krepp left and is now at the FDIC. Annalise Peters, she is now with Meta. You don't go to a career as a prosecutor. That's not what you do. You don't go to the graveyard of the FDIC when you're trying to build a career as a defense attorney. So
I also think it's very important to note that it took 7 years to issue a formal indictment.
Exactly.
So the investigation was going on for almost a decade. And when you look at it, our judge was the youngest African-American female appointed by Obama. So she allowed so many things to come into trial with the Fourth Amendment violations, and magistrate judge ruled that all the evidence must be thrown out because it was obtained illegally. So we don't know if stuff was planted. Mark Braddock was involved. He got full immunity from the government. So the whole trial was just messy and tainted. And when the magistrate judge ruled the evidence was not allowed in, the Obama-appointed judge said, nope, I don't care. We're allowing it all in.
And with an email that said, we need to catch a big fish. And the response was, well, Todd Chrisley is the biggest fish in Atlanta right now.
And I think it's also important to note that the Office of Inspector General ruled in our favor in their documents, in their investigation, that stated the Chrisleys were unfairly targeted. We substantiate
due to their celebrity status.
Yes, we substantiate the Chrisleys' claims that they were unfairly targeted. So at the end of the day, I will sit and say, as his daughter, I believe in law and order. If I believe that my parents did exactly what they were accused of doing, then yes, you have a consequence for it. Do I think the consequence should have been 12 years? No, I do not. That's not even a fair sentence if it was true. But I know in my heart of hearts it was not true. I caught these prosecutors in so much misconduct, speaking to the judge, having ex parte communications. And
This is in writing.
It is in writing. Alex exposed the emails. So I think at the end of the day, if you want a conviction, then have a clean conviction.
And to go back to your question about it being a Trump administration, it was a Biden administration that the OIG issued the report under that said that we were targeted.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you.
All right, guys.
That's it.
Thank you all very much.
Thank
Awesome.
you.
Thank you.
Y'all have a wonderful day. God bless.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming. If you guys need anything, I can give you a card or my email, phone number, whatever you'll need. I'm here to help. Thanks.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
So Alex will not, Alex will talk to us. I have some questions or anything about that.
Send those an email to me and I'll do my best to.
Hi, Natasha Zubes here at NewsNation headquarters. So glad to be with you on a Friday, and we were bringing you that live. Todd and Julie Chrisley, who of course became famous after their reality show Chrisley Knows Best, speaking to the press for the first time today since they were pardoned by President Trump. You heard him begin by thanking supporters, saying he would continue to fight for the wrongly convicted. He says, "I was convicted of something I did not do." He said, "It could be you, it could be any of you." He was convicted of bank and tax fraud back in 2022. Todd Chrisley sentenced to 12 years in federal prison. Julie Chrisley receiving 7 years. A lot of reaction happening online to this. Of course, we'll keep monitoring this, your top stories, your top headlines, and everything happening live around the country right after this short break. Stay with us. And welcome back. I'm Natasha Zubes here at NewsNation headquarters, joining you on this Friday, the 30th. So glad to be with you today. Let's go to this next. James Carville says it's the Democrats' fault that we lost because the party, he says, didn't give the country what they wanted. Carville joined NewsNation's Chris Cuomo to discuss why the party will not have a message until they have a presidential nominee and why no leader will emerge until the beginning of 2020.
Legendary strategist, Mr. James Carville. What'd you think of Bill O'Reilly's dispatch? He is the most potent journalist in the history of the world.
Look, I'm not going to comment on who's a potent journalist or not. That's not my expertise. You can get to people at Columbia Review of Journalism to talk about that. I'm not an expert in that field. from what I listened to his interview, and what he said clearly comports with other things that people that have been to China have told me the same thing. It's a very totalitarian, authoritarian state that's very security conscious, doesn't harbor dissent. It's the most authoritarian. I don't know. It seems North Korea could compete with them pretty good, but I don't have but from everything he said, it seemed pretty in line with most of the things I'd heard previously or been told.
I agree with you, except for the Columbia Journalism review.
I don't know.
The last thing I want is those those gumshoe elitists telling me anything about anything. But let me ask you something.
I don't care. Okay,
I got you, Jimmy. I'm just messing with you. Let me ask you something. So the autopsy comes out. Trump sucks isn't enough. Democrats have to retool and show what they're for and how they're going to make things better if they want to build a new constituency. It's not a surprising message, but is it one that the party is receptive to because they seem to be just trying to out MAGA?
Well, let's back it up. First of all, the catalyst is they're very competent data analysts and they're very good at numbers and algorithms and regression analysis and all that. The truth of the matter is, if we'd have had a different candidate, we'd have won by 5. Understand, the most important thing in politics is candidate quality. You just don't put a bunch of numbers and get them say, well, you're down 2.5% with black males under 30, or you up this, or you're that. If the country wanted something different, we resolutely refused to give it to them.
Mm-hmm.
It still almost won the election. If we would have nominated Governor Whitmer or Shapiro or 5 other people, we'd have won this thing going away. It was an election that people wanted something different, and we gave them the same candidate, the same staff, the same message, the same record, the same everything. And that was what happened. It was just people were saying, I want something different. And they said, we're not doing anything different. And she was under orders from the president not to have 1 centimeter of space. And that's what happened. And I think catalysts, they do good stuff. Everybody looks at it. It's a very analytical, but I'll tell you why it happened, because people wanted change and we didn't give it to them.
But it's not just the person, it's the proposition also. And it's what you're for. And you could have the best candidate ever. If all they're saying is Trump sucks, he's a Nazi, people were tired of it. It says it right in the report.
They would have never said that. And what am I supposed to do? So you have me on me. I'm supposed to be honest. I don't think Trump has any idea what he's doing. Okay, I just really don't. If you want my honest opinion, he doesn't have a strategy for tariffs. He just gets up in the morning and thinks of something else. So, but when you a political nominee that has real skill, that can articulate a message, but we're not going to get a message until we get a clear presidential nominee. But parties don't work like that just yet. There's nobody going to emerge until the beginning of 2028, and then there are going to be a lot of skilled people emerging. But we should have done this in 2024, and we would have won. It is the Democrats' fault that we lost because we wouldn't give the country what they wanted. It was really stupid. Excuse me.
Process. I'm with you, but again, I think it's more than that. What if your process winds up revealing a far left candidate from your primary process, who's like, hey, we got to lean in and be even more woke than ever, and we're angrier than they are?
When has the Democrats ever nominated the most far left candidate? We don't do that. Let them run. They never get any votes. They never run against any Republicans. They're great fodder for cable news. They're great fodder for the internet. But when they go to post and run in the Democratic Party, they always lose. So I'm not really worried about the far left winning anything. And we have eons of skilled candidates that are not far left, that are maybe what I would call myself. I do not think I'm a moderate. I think I'm a liberal and a proud one. But okay, whatever somebody wants to call me, I don't really care. But there is a lot of skill out there, and I have zero concern that we would nominate a far left candidate. That's just not who the people that vote in the Democratic Party are at all. Not close.
Do you think enough people in this country believe Democrats want America to succeed versus just wanting Trump to fail?
I don't think the country, understandably, really knows the Democrats for because we don't have a leader. We don't have any power. We react. And look, I think there's golden opportunities over the summer. I think the stuff they're doing at the Veterans Administration, we have 18 veteran suicides a day, and they're cutting the veteran suicide hotline. They're cutting obligations that we made to veterans. If we can't make political hay out of that, and I don't think we ought to have a middle ground. Suicides a day are acceptable. I don't think that. And I think we have all kinds of issues, and you haven't seen anything till you see these deficit numbers that are going to come in after they pass this bill. They're going to be mind-boggling. I had Larry Summers on my podcast, and it's almost incomprehensible what they're getting ready to do. Incomprehensible. So we have to react to it. We don't have to do anything about it.
Well, Jimmy, I'll be here with you every step of the way. We'll see what happens, and we'll see what your party does with it. And I always look forward to your perspective. Thank you very much.
That's my opinion. Thank you, Chris.
Welcome back, and that was James Carville speaking with News Nation's Chris Cuomo there. We're keeping an eye, as always, on what's happening live right now. I actually want to take you to the Education Secretary at Massapequa High School in New York, live on the ground to discuss the findings of the ongoing investigation from 2023, from that ban of Native American imagery as the school sports.
Well, certainly what the president has been very clear about is that he does believe that the best education, and I share this belief, is that education that is closest to the students, best handled by local superintendents, teachers, strong parental involvement, and that is what the goal is, to bring education back to the states.
Great. Thank you, everyone. B-roll of the thing is going to be in your inboxes as soon as Mac are back. I can get to a computer, which will be in probably a half an hour, because I will push that. You heard that. And if you have a problem, get mad at Mac.
You can't get mad at me.
Welcome back. We are turning to this now. Representative Mark Alford of Missouri speaking with News Nation's Elizabeth Vargas regarding claims made by a whistleblower that a loan forgiveness program that was started in the Biden administration to help farmers was allegedly only provided to minorities, passing over their white counterparts.
Thank you so much, Henna, and thank you to News Nation for great reporting, bringing this to the attention of Congress. This is not the first help that black farmers have gotten from Congress over the years. I put together a quick list if you want to run through it real quick. In
Very
2002,
quickly, go ahead, sir. Yes, please.
2002, a farm bill created technical assistance programs for black farmers. 2008, more assistance. 2018, expanding credit for black farmers. 2021, the American Rescue Plan provided this $4 billion in debt relief. 2022, the Inflation Reduction Act provided the $2.2 billion to those who felt disadvantaged. It goes on and on. This DEI program, withholding information where all farmers who are damaged by Biden's poor economy that's putting a lot of farmers out of business, is not right. We need equal weights and measures.
Are you surprised by what this whistleblower is claiming?
No, I'm not. The USDA has had very severe problems in the previous administration with the previous secretary. Thank goodness we have Brooke Rollins in there straightening it out. Even the building itself, 2 million square feet. We tried to get in when I first got into Congress. They wouldn't let us in the door. 2 million square feet. It was only 6% occupied. The USDA needs to get back to the business of helping farmers. Brooke Rollins.
Welcome back. I'm Natasha Zubes here at NewsNation Now. Sorry, our deck is having some technical difficulties today. It is a Friday. We appreciate you bearing with us. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back.
Legendary strategist, Mr. James Carville.
Welcome back. I'm Natasha Zubes here in the NewsNation newsroom. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth is in Singapore today. He met with U.S. forces aboard a U.S. Navy destroyer in Singapore just this morning, and then later on met with an assortment of defense counterparts, including that country's prime minister.
Good. Thank you. Welcome to Singapore. Thank you so much. Thank you. It's an honor. We appreciate you coming. Just reading close to the yellow space. Yellow dots for us to follow. First, really nice. 3, 2, 1, nice shot. And hold the camera up. Ready? 1, 2. Okay. Thank you. Thank you much. Thank you. Not at all. Honored to have you visit your first time in Singapore. Come. Welcome once again. Thank you very much.
Whoa.
The dialogue, so we welcome you here. We value the partnership we have.
What's happening, guys?
You had that unpaired, didn't you?
Yeah.
Well, hold on.
Whoa.
Wrong.
by our close defense and security ties. And it's been growing over the years since our Memorandum of Understanding in 1990, which was renewed incidentally when President Trump was president in his first administration. That's right. We continue to provide full support for America's deployment through the Asia Pacific because we believe that your presence here is a positive force for stability and continued prosperity for all of us in Asia. So thank you for being here. Welcome, and we look forward to hearing what you have to say in the Shangri-La Dialogue.
Well, thank you very much for welcoming us, being such gracious hosts. I couldn't say it better myself. This is the continuation of a very important, long-standing relationship, a bond that has been strengthened over time, and we want to continue to renew. I had a great meeting this morning with your defense minister as well. And the extent of our military-to-military cooperation is unprecedented. The amount of the hospitality you show to our troops and rotational forces, our ships that are here, but then also the over 1,000 members of your military over in the United States. As I was saying, just a little bit more airspace in the United States.
I visited them at Arizona.
Yes, and they do. We were talking this morning. Probably the only country that hosts its own exercise.
How are you doing? Good to see you. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you for your time. Appreciate that. Shall we?
Good afternoon. It's good to see a lot of familiar faces, new faces, my fellow ministers. Thank you all for the very kind welcome. I want to start by thanking Minister Chan and our host from Singapore for their gracious hospitality during the Shangri-La Dialogue. I also want to thank Minister Khalid for Malaysia's leadership as the 2025 ASEAN chair. And of course, I'm grateful to Cambodia's role as the ASEAN coordinating country for the United States. Thank you. President Trump has given us, the mandate to achieve peace through strength through a common sense approach. And we're doing this in three primary ways at the Defense Department: restoring the warrior ethos, rebuilding our military, and reestablishing deterrence. And I want to highlight that third task, reestablishing deterrence, because it's so greatly, we believe, benefits ASEAN. The United States is committed to working with our allies and partners to deter aggression by Communist China in the Indo-Pacific. And we're doing this, in particular, reestablishing deterrence through strength by standing shoulder to shoulder with you. We will unite against those who threaten a free and open Indo-Pacific. A key part of our success will be empowering allies and partners, like all of you, to even better defend your territory and to ensure peace and security in this region. That's what we want. That's our overarching message here. We seek and we want security and stability. The U.S. military's mission, my job, our job, is to deter war. But if deterrence were to fail, it's also our job to be ready. President Trump's vision for a free and open Indo-Pacific is as true today as it was when he first laid it out in Vietnam in 2017. It's based on common sense and pragmatic cooperation. That's the ASEAN way. I also want to highlight our strong partnerships and our expanding defense cooperation with many ASEAN countries. We are eager to continue working with you. And we remain committed to an empowered unified ASEAN that plays a central role in Southeast Asia. A couple examples. The United States has been a consistent ADMM plus dialogue partner since the beginning, and we look forward to continuing that important work. We're proud to co-chair the experts working group on military medicine with Indonesia, which focuses on enhanced readiness to meet those shared health challenges. We want to thank you for that continued support. And we seek to do more to enhance ASEAN's capacity to protect itself from cyber attacks and cyber intrusions. This includes working in conjunction with the ADMM Cybersecurity and Information Center of Excellence right here in Singapore. We're also continuing the Emerging Defense Leaders Program to build the next generation of Southeast Asian defense officials. And to that end, I recently had a chance to visit the Asia Pacific Center for Security Studies in Hawaii. They were eager to update me on the program's success and how we are training the next generation of leaders. So we definitely continue to ask for your help with identifying promising young strategic leaders and for their participation in that world-class leadership program. We also continue to plan for a second ASEAN United States maritime exercise, the AUMX, later this year. And this exercise builds on practical cooperation by training for multilateral information sharing and real-time incident response in the maritime domain. We believe this is critical because all of you are on the front lines upholding maritime security in the region. And we will continue to maintain, as Admiral Carper does so well, a steady drumbeat of trainings and exercises throughout Southeast Asia. These activities help professionalize your forces and ours and increase our interoperability as we continue to face pressing security challenges in Southeast Asia. The United States is committed to working with you to tackle those challenges by working together on a basis of mutual interest and mutual trust. On a basis of mutual interest and mutual trust, overlapping interests that intersect, I'm confident that we can deter aggression and achieve peace through strength. So I look forward to hearing from all of you today. It's an honor to be here, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Now I would invite the 2025
Thank you.
ASEAN Chair of the President.
Yeah, we can come set you back up early.
That's just, yeah, that's it.
That was Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth in Singapore today. I want to return to this. Representative Mark Alford of Missouri speaking with NewsNation regarding claims made by a whistleblower that a loan forgiveness program under the Biden administration to help farmers allegedly only provided that help to minorities, passing over their white counterparts. Let's take a listen to that conversation.
Thank you so much, Anna, and thank you to NewsNation for great reporting, bringing this to the attention of Congress. This is not the first help that black farmers have gotten from Congress over the years. I put together a quick list if you want to run through it real quick. In
Very quickly, go ahead, sir. Yes, please.
2002, a Farm Bill created technical assistance programs for black farmers. 2008, more assistance. 2018, expanding credit for black farmers. 2021, the American Rescue Plan provided this $4 billion in debt relief. 2022, the Inflation Reduction Act provided the $2.2 billion to those who felt disadvantaged. It goes on and on. This DEI information where all farmers who are damaged by Biden's poor economy that's putting a lot of farmers out of business is not right. We need equal weights and measures.
Are you surprised by what this whistleblower is claiming?
has had very severe problems in the previous administration with the previous secretary. Thank goodness we have Brooke Rollins in there straightening it out. Even the building itself, 2 million square feet. We tried to get in when I first got into Congress. They wouldn't let us in the door. 2 million square feet. It was only 6% occupied. The USDA needs to get back to the business of helping farmers. Brooke Rollins is doing that. Our farmers are going out of business. Hannah, we are losing 1,000 farms a month in America, and our food security is national security.
Yeah, we've had a lot of farmers on this network, black farmers also, who have been doing this for generations, who are really worried they're going to lose their farm. We know white farmers sued. A federal court ruled the policy illegal. Do you agree there, Congressman?
Oh, it's highly illegal. This is reverse discrimination. I think the courts will see that. The high input costs, the overregulation from the EPA and the high input costs from Joe Biden's war on fossil fuels has really put many farmers out of business. And at a time when all farmers, no matter the color of their skin, need help from the federal government to stay afloat, that we have food security in America and we can feed not just America, but feed the world, it is important that we get it right and the money is disseminated to those who truly need it, no matter their skin color.
Congressman, I am curious here. Are there farmers in your state, the great state of Missouri, that also weren't provided loan relief, as far as you know?
Well, I want to find that out, and that's why we are issuing a letter. Our staff is working on this now based on the investigation from NewsNation. We are sending to Brooke Rollins and the Inspector General to try to get to the bottom of this. Who are the people in the previous administration, possibly still working for the U.S. Department of Agriculture, which purposely did not send this information to certain farmers based on their skin? Farmers are hardworking people. They sacrifice their time, their families, their blood, sweat, and tears to grow corn and soybeans in my district, and we should not be withholding aid to them simply because of their skin color.
Yeah, I'm with you. It doesn't matter. Farming is so hard for everyone, no matter what the color of their skin is. So there's a document that NewsNation has obtained. It shows there are other DEI provisions for farmers under the Trump administration, like the NAP program, which socially disadvantaged farmers give a 50% premium reduction and a waiver of its fee. Are you aware of these programs, sir?
No, I wasn't personally aware of these. I know that there have been programs in the last 20 years, basically, to try to provide equity. Of course, they didn't use the term equity back then. But in the past, the history of the United States, some races were disadvantaged in farming. They were disadvantaged in redlining from the real estate industry in America. That has changed with HUD policy and judicial rulings. But that has been righted in the USDA. Those programs have been righted for all farmers. And we need to make sure that while we're on an equal playing field, we are not giving preference to one race, one particular segment of our population, and let's stick to equality and not equity. Equal opportunities, but not equal outcomes.
Very well said. You sit on the House Agricultural Committee and Small Business Committee, many who represent farmers, and they're touting that big, beautiful bill as beneficial to farmers. In what way does this bill help our farmers?
Are you talking about the bill to help supplement some of their losses?
That's right. Yes, the subsidies and the supplements. Yes.
Right. Well, look, our farmers, as I've said, have faced some tremendous economic pressures, primarily from Joe Biden and his war on fossil fuels. They can't afford diesel to plant their crops this year. They can't afford the fertilizer. Fertilizer is primarily made from natural gas, and when those prices go up, farmers can't afford it. And so we've got to make sure, one thing we've got to make sure is we get a farm bill done. We've been on an extension now for more than a year. We got it passed out of the committee last go around, couldn't get it passed on the House floor. But we've got to get these programs right because our food security, as I said before, is our national security. We've got to make sure that family farms survive in America.
Congressman, I'm out of time, but I want to ask you, how quickly can we rectify this to make sure our farmers don't lose their farms in the short term?
Well, we're working on it. I have my staff getting this letter out tomorrow. This needs to be swift. We need to have answers within 90 days is what we're going to be asking. Let's put some eyeballs on this. I'm going to personally try to contact the Secretary of Ag. Just one quick correction. I was on the Agriculture Committee last year. This term, I'm on the Appropriations Committee. We are also asked Secretary Rollins and the Inspector General return this report to the subcommittee chair of the Agriculture Appropriations Appropriations Committee. We've got to work on this. We've got to get this right for the American farmer.
Well, thank you for the clarification, and we hope you come back in 90 days. We're not going to let this story go, Congressman, as you well know. Congressman Mark Alford, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And that was GOP Representative Mark Alford speaking with Hannah Doba on News Nation's Elizabeth Vargas reports there. We're going to take a quick break, and we will bring you an update on the disaster in East Palestine. Stay with us. Welcome back on a Friday. I'm Natasha Zubes here live in the News Nation newsroom. Glad you're here with me. Well, News Nation is determined to stay with this story to help shine a light where it is needed. And it's hard to believe it's been 2 years since the Norfolk Southern train derailment in East Palestine, the subsequent toxic plume of smoke that devastated and engulfed that area. A lawsuit against the transport company alleges a conspiracy to deny health care to those impacted. And we see residents now filing a series of lawsuits against Norfolk Southern and government agencies as well, including EPA, CDC, and FEMA. They allege the companies and agencies involved did not do enough to protect the town following the derailment and the explosion. Let's take a listen.
The idea that 5 cars of toxic vinyl chloride could derail and most of the media and the government would just pretend like it was no big deal because the place doesn't matter is as sickening as the chemicals were to the people there. 5 days after the accident, despite all the smoke and all the chemicals and all the crap, the residents were told, yeah, you can go home. Many knew it didn't make sense. You could still see it in the air. You could still smell it. And questions were consistent. And the EPA, what they were saying just didn't make sense. The presence was too small. They were on CYA mode. And then this EPA whistleblower comes forward saying that the aerial testing was delayed and conducted improperly, making it impossible to determine if it were really safe or not. And yet, in a guidance sheet that was obtained exclusively by News Nation's investigative correspondent, Rich McHugh, residents and local doctors were told what? By federal, no testing or treatment related to a specific chemical exposure is recommended. Really? When the water is bubbling rainbows and you smell it in the air everywhere? Residents said medical professionals then followed that advice. Listen.
We were being told that there was a letter that was sent out telling our healthcare officials to disregard our concerns.
My mom went to the clinic in East Palestine, and when she asked, they would giggle at her and say, that's your age. her
You're crazy.
Yeah, her non-contagious pneumonia that she developed within a couple of weeks of coming back to East Palestine, that couldn't have been related.
The CDC had their own workers here, and they left. They didn't tell anyone in our village that they were getting sick. They just left us.
When we got that message, that's why we went to East Palestine and did the town hall there. And I'm telling you, you don't have to be a scientist to know that people there were sick. And now they have filed lawsuits. Good for them. Against who? Companies, the train company, of course, Norfolk Southern, the government agencies, CDC, EPA, FEMA. I want to bring in East Palestine resident Jamie Wallace, who, we've been following since day one, and her attorney in the case, Don Keenan, who's leading the legal effort. Don, Jamie, thank you for being with us. First of all, Jamie, how you doing? And how you feeling about this move?
I've been better health-wise. My family has been better, but I do feel like this is the right move. As you saw in the clip, CDC comes in and they get sick and they leave us here. They betrayed us. Our government betrayed us. We're tax-paying United States citizens, left us. Still nothing, not even a bottle of water. So we had no other course but to find the fighters like we are to come in and to help us fight.
Counsel, legally, what is the sufficiency of the claim here? The government will say, look, we did what we were supposed to do. We checked all the boxes. We followed the regulations. And there's always some kind of negative fallout from something like this. But we couldn't pick up the whole community and move it. So we did what we could.
Chris, first of all, thank you for the spotlight that you've shown these proud people of East Palestine. Number one, 200 years ago, the 7th Amendment of the Constitution provided a civil jury trial remedy. These people need a jury. They need a jury of their peers to take a look at this evidence and to see clearly the cover-up that was done and to do justice by these people. I mean, they've been on the short end of the stick from the very damn beginning, and it's unfair. These are good people, very good people. And I'm proud to say I was the product of a small town. And when I went up there and spent time with them, it was like I was dealing with the people that I was raised by, and they didn't deserve this, Chris. They just don't deserve it. What they do deserve is somebody like you and Rich that comes in with that powerful spotlight and exposes this. This is one of the first times when the EPA, who should be our guardian, has been sued for covering up, and they covered up big time. I can't believe that they thought the people would be that stupid and to accept it. Well, these people are not stupid, and they're standing up, and they're going to get their day in court before a jury, not a conveyor belt mass tort class action debacle, which has preceded this thing. They knew that wasn't right. So it's the jury trial coming up.
What do you think the most important aspect of this is, counsel?
The cover-up. Cover-up, no question about it. I mean, you don't have the words like toxic ingredients and then all of a sudden saying, well, yeah, it's toxic, but it's not harmful. Well, toxic is deadly. You can't make a cover-up like that. And it was deliberate, and it was fulfilled over months and months and months. And, it almost worked. It really did, until the community came together and says, this ain't right. And so, yes, the spill was horrible and the collision was bad. Yeah, no question about it. But it's the cover-up that's the case.
Counsel, thank you. Jamie, as you know, Rich is just a soldier of the truth. So he's always a call away. NewsNation is here for the duration, as promised from the beginning. We'll see it through. That's the job. God bless. Stay strong. And if you need us, we're here. Counsel, same.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Jamie, take care.
And that was News Nation's Chris Cuomo and Rich McHugh there, spotlighting residents of East Palestine as the fight continues. They will stick with that. Well, City College of New York students are graduating right now, and it comes as the Trump administration has cut off aid for scientific degrees, which was previously funded by the National Institutes of Health, the NIH. Let's take a listen.
Sheltered, clothed, housed, alive. I, at the time, was a first-term city council member in Brooklyn, and our community stood up a shelter in an old armory building for 500 frail elderly who had lost their homes. And over the course of those next weeks, I witnessed one example after another of New Yorkers who, instead of being consumed by the catastrophe, took heroic acts of courage and care to look out for complete strangers. Now, the crises of the past few years have definitely led to some real examples of solidarity. Mutual aid groups sprung up during the pandemic, I know, right here on campus and throughout the city. But I think there's broad agreement facing are doing more to tear us apart than they are to bring us together. So the question I want to pose to you today, as you get set to graduate out into the world, is why do some crises bring us together, promote that organized compassion, and some others, like the ones of the past few years, seem to pull us apart? And I don't have all the answers, but I'm going to suggest a couple of reasons and what they mean for our shared future. And I'd welcome your better ideas and even more your work to change it. First, I worry that our capacity for empathy is being hacked. I've heard some people say as they watch the devastating cuts that Congress is proposing to health care, to food stamps, to housing, well, just wait until they go into effect. When people see how it's harming folks, they'll start to get together and oppose them. But I have to be honest, I don't know if that's true. The dizzying news cycle, economic uncertainty, social media, they steal our attention. Though we are, by some measures, more connected than ever before, the algorithms that dictate our experiences seem to drain that connection. And then in the political landscape, as autocrats have throughout history, Trump and others are trying to force us into some zero-sum insular thinking, to be occupied only with yourself and with self-concern, and then to give you someone else to blame. Immigrants, trans folks, anyone else. Even though those folks have nothing to do with the problems we're actually facing, like rising inflation or housing prices. The author Dahlia Lithwick recently wrote, "It is not so much that most Americans are without basic empathy, but rather that we're being forced to ration it and to serve ourselves first. Our ability to see each other's full humanity is being eroded." Now, to sharpen this point, and at some risk, I want to bring in one other crisis that has marked your time in college, and we've even been hearing about it today. This one half a world away. When Hamas attacked Israel on October 7th, killing over 1,200 people, and then Israel's brutal response, killing over 50,000 people, so many of them children, with hundreds of thousands now facing starvation, bombing, and mass displacement. And even though this crisis is half a world away, it has reverberated on this and many other campuses around the country. Now, I was the first Jewish elected official in New York to call for a ceasefire in Gaza, but I'm not here today to speak to you about the issue. As the protests continue to show, there are strong feelings, and of course, not everyone agrees about them. But what I want to observe is this. The brutality of war should open our hearts up to shared humanity as we witness suffering and push us to end the suffering we see. And yet, so often, war polarizes and somehow erodes our compassion rather than builds it, despite so many pictures and stories of beautiful lives stolen in Gaza. Too many people fail to see Palestinians as fully human. And yet, on the other side, rather than have his empathy increase, the individual who killed Yaron Lashinsky and Sarah Milgram outside a Jewish event in Washington, D.C. last week, utterly failed to see them as human. Crises can be, they should be, a time when empathy grows, and we have to work to make sure this is not a time when empathy shrinks. This brings me to my second hypothesis for why contemporary crises are pulling us apart rather than bringing us together. I think our ability to have dialogue across difference is also being badly eroded. Survey data shows we're increasingly politically polarized. We don't have as much opportunity to talk to debate with, to meet with people with very different ideas from us, and to figure out how to see them as fully human, even when we sharply disagree. I'm told this has even made its way to dating apps. My wife and I started dating on campus, for what it's worth, so you never know who you're sitting next to today. But City College has a proud tradition of fostering debate. I even saw a movie once called Arguing the World about City College alums in the 1930s who, between Alcove 1 and Alcove 2, had some of the fiercest debates, and yet they went on to lead this city because they sharpened their thinking, they learned how to debate and disagree, to still understand the people in the other alcove were folks that they should dialogue and debate with. And yet, broadly, that capacity is being badly eroded. And this brings me to my third and final point. Right now, we lack institutions with enough trust to unify us, to take on the big challenges that we're facing. Survey after survey shows it, from the federal government to the news media, to higher education, to unions, even to scientific and religious organizations. Historically respected institutions are losing people's confidence. And this means when those crises hit, people are more likely to blame institutions rather than mobilize around them as spaces for building shared response. And the cycle is one of recrimination rather than solidarity. But now look, many of our institutions have serious flaws, to be sure. But I believe they're worth fighting for, worth working to make better, and so do most Americans. More than 8 in 10 say that confidence in government, confidence in institutions can be increased by focusing on increasing transparency, by trying to have leaders who lead with integrity, by engaging and building community. That is what I have tried to do in my career as New York City Controller. That's New York City's Chief Accountability Officer, where I get to work with 700 public servants to make our city more transparent, try to make government more honest, more responsive to the needs of New Yorkers. There is still time, Island and Andrew. Look, you know we face big challenges. You feel it every day. But here's the good news. You, the City College graduating class of 2025, you represent powerful answers to every single one of those challenges. On the erosion of empathy, your stories are such powerful examples of human connection and perseverance against the hardest challenges of our time. I urge you to go out in the world and find ways to share those stories so other people get to know who you are and can be as proud of you as your parents are. It will make a difference. On our broken channels of communication, in your time on this campus, you've engaged in a great deal of dialogue and debate. That spirit of arguing the world, I know it's alive and well right here at City College. Keep it alive and well as you move out into the world. And finally, with respect to institutions, you are graduating from an institution in a city that is undoubtedly worthy of unifying around. City College, the flagship of the City University of New York, the most powerful vehicle of social uplift and mobility and collective progress in New York City, one of the most diverse and greatest cities on the planet. I think today it is plain for all to see that your individual resilience, your personal struggles and triumphs, your brilliance and creativity, your courage and care for each other and your families and your communities, they can add up to a powerful collective response to not only the crises that we have faced in the past, but to the many challenges that you will face in the future. I can't wait to see you do it, whichever department you work in. Thank you and congratulations to the City College graduating class of 2025, and good luck in everything you do.
Thank you, Mr. Lander. Now, trustee of the City University of New York, John Verzani, will bring greetings to the 2025 graduating class. Trustee Verzani.
Good morning, President Boudreau, distinguished faculty, guests, families, friends, and College of New York's graduating class of 2025. As the faculty trustee, it is my great honor to be here today on behalf of the Board of Trustees of the City University of New York to give brief remarks. Class of 2025, we are here today to celebrate a significant milestone in your lives, the culmination of years of hard work, dedication, and perseverance. This moment is a testament to your resilience, strength, and continued commitment to your education. You are the pride of CUNY and the pride of New York. The trustees are enormously proud of the class of 2025. We expect great things from each of you and will be rooting for your success. I have no doubt that you have the talent and passion to change the world for the better. After all, you are CUNY graduates. Best of luck, class of 2025.
The salutatory address will now be given by Andrew Williams, salutatorian of the class of 2025.
Good afternoon to the class of 2025. Good afternoon to President Boudreau, the Office of the Provost, all the faculty, honored guests, and all the families and friends of this remarkable graduating class. It is truly an immense honor to stand before you today as the salutatorian of this amazing class. Before I begin, I would first like to thank God, for without Him, I would not be here standing before you all today. I would also like to say a very special thank you to my family sitting right over there. Love you guys. And finally, a very special thank you to all my friends and mentors, Jamie, Y, Will, Dr. Stark, Dr. Millara, who have truly helped to guide me over the course of my last 4 years here at the City College of New York. So, as I thought about what I wanted to discuss with you all today, I was somewhat coincidentally watching an anime, which I'm sure many of you have heard of, called Solo Leveling. And it is essentially about a character who can ceaselessly level up in power and defeat enemies who are incredibly strong. While watching, I thought about how amazing it would be if we all just had a floating screen, just like the protagonist does in the show, which would allow us to upgrade ourselves. And then it dawned on me, in a sense, we truly do. Education is actually our way of leveling up. As the child... As a child of Jamaican immigrants, my parents ensured, while growing up, that I was fully aware of all the trials they endured simply to get an education. My mother, growing up in the rural hills of St. Elizabeth, Jamaica, where sugarcane swayed in the distance, where the roads were nothing more than dusty trails carved by generations of determined footsteps, she walked. She walked 7 miles every day, each step fueled not by luxury, but by necessity. That same across an ocean where for over 25 years, she has stood in front of a classroom in New York City, shaping young minds, reminding them, reminding me that knowledge is the one thing, the one possession that cannot be stolen, cannot be diminished, and cannot be erased. Yet, even within these halls of higher learning, I've seen how intellect is too often measured. You're smart for a black guy up here once told me. A statement meant to praise but laced with microaggression. A reminder that the road to equality is still unfinished. But education, true transformative education, is the great liberator. As the legendary B.B. King once said, the beautiful thing about education is that no one can take it away from you. And so now, as we stand at a crossroads, what will we do with this education? Will we allow it to sit idly as a symbol of achievement, or will we wield it as a tool to dismantle barriers, to challenge injustice, to innovate and lead? Knowledge alone is not enough. It is the action we take with it that defines us. Class of 2025, let us be disruptors, let us be visionaries, and let us be change makers. Let our education be the fire that fuels transformation. Thank you.
The valedictory address will now be given by Eileen Zuniga Marquez, valedictorian of the class of 2025.
I think it works. Good afternoon, fellow graduates, family, friends, staff, faculty members, and honored guests. First, I would like to congratulate the class of 2025. We have made it. We did that. We have achieved an incredible milestone today, with resistance written all over it. When I moved to New York City in 2018 from El Salvador, I landed with an album of family photos and a broken heart. I left everything dear and loved to me behind: my grandmother, my family, friends, and all that I ever knew. I had no choice but to accept my new reality. This reality included navigating a world I was a stranger in, an outsider, starting with one of its most important components, language. Being here as a teenager felt like I was stripped of everything, and I was being punished for being born in a different country. Later, I realized that I belonged here too. But even with a broken heart, I knew one thing. I needed to finish high school and go to college, whatever that looked like here. And so I did. That's how I became a student at CCNY. I know many of you share my story, and I also know that many of us here are first-generation graduates who have defied the odds. Give yourself a round of applause for that. You did that. We know they do not expect us to be here, to be educated, but we are here. And we're not going anywhere because we are part of this country too. Our college experience has been unique, one of resistance and resilience. We often had to juggle school, multiple jobs, family, friends, and the long and draining commute for most of us. And although there were times when attending that 8 p.m. class in the NAC building where the escalators and elevators rarely worked, making the building inaccessible for people with mobility disabilities felt like all the effort was not worth it, but we still showed up. We showed up for ourselves every single time we decided that getting this education, getting this degree was more important than our comfort. I come to 2025 because the barriers we faced to be here today are comedic. It was as if we were part of a game, but we were never given the instructions on how to play. even though we were required to compete at the same level as those with more advantages. But we still showed up, and we completed the game. Showing up is a form of resistance, and God knows we have done that. From our fellow students protesting for Palestine who exercised their right to protest and were met with a violent response from campus security officers, to those who thought they didn't have the strength to keep going and finish one more semester. This class embodies what it means to show up, to resist the systems that are designed to benefit the few and oppress the rest, us. We went against a predetermined future, rolled the dice, and put ourselves first, ignoring the noise that said, "You won't make it. College is not meant for people like you." What are people like us anyway? What I know is this: the attacks on immigrants, especially our Latina community right now, are signs of fragility, racism, and fear that we are becoming leaders and shaping our own futures.
And that was a live look at the City College of New York graduation, coming as the Trump administration has cut off aid for scientific degrees previously funded by the NIH. We're going to take a quick break, and we will bring you to an update just coming in on what's expected to be a busy hurricane season. Stay with us. Hey, welcome back. I'm Natasha Zubest in the NewsNation newsroom, joining you on this Friday, the 30th. So glad to be with you today. Well, officials at the National Hurricane Center are highlighting the need to get ready now for what is expected to be a busy hurricane season ahead. The NHC forecasting up to 19 named storms this year, 6 to 10 of which could become hurricanes, 3 to 5 forecasted to become major hurricanes, which means Category 3 and above. Let's listen to this video just into our NewsNation newsroom.
If you guys want to get a little bit closer, just a little closer, so everybody can be on the shot. Okay, everybody can hear me? We're good? All right, well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the National Hurricane Center. My name is Maria Torres. I'm the Public Affairs Officer for the Hurricane Center, and I'll be today's host for this event. So thank you all for being here. We really appreciate you guys coming to help us with the kickoff of the 2025 hurricane season for the Atlantic Basin. So our goal again here today is mainly just remind our communities the importance of preparedness, that this is the time to prepare. Don't wait until the last minute. It's the time to prepare is now. So definitely thank you so much for sharing that information to our audience and our communities out there. So for today's, the news conference is going to feature 10 to 15 minutes worth of remarks from our speakers, and then it's going to follow with a Q&A with afterwards from the audience. So our speakers for today is Dr. Michael Brennan. He is the National Hurricane Center Director, and Captain Aaron Hortensio, Commanding Officer of the U.S. Coast Guard District 7. So with that, welcoming Dr. Michael Brennan. So come on in.
Thanks, Maria. Thanks for the introduction, and thank you all for coming, and good morning. As Maria said, our primary goal here and throughout Hurricane Awareness Week, or what really becomes Hurricane Awareness Month in Miami in May, is to raise awareness that the 2025 hurricane season is right on our doorstep. Now is the time for communities all across the United States, all across the Atlantic Basin, East Pacific Basin, to prepare and get ready for what is expected to be a busy hurricane season. NOAA's seasonal forecast came out last week with a 60% chance of above normal activity across the Atlantic Basin. We're expecting 13 to 19 named storms of systems of at least tropical storm strength, 6 to 10 of those becoming hurricanes, 3 to 5 of those becoming major hurricanes. So we've been in a very active period, more or less, for about the last 30 years in the Atlantic. But it's really important to remind everybody in hurricane-prone areas that it doesn't really matter what the seasonal forecast says. There are risks of impacts every year. As we saw last year, across the entire basin in the Atlantic, we had 10 hurricane landfalls with significant devastating impacts all the way from the Lesser Antilles through the Caribbean to Central America, and then 5 U.S. hurricane landfalls all along the U.S. Gulf Coast, from Texas to Louisiana, to 3 in Florida. And it doesn't take a hurricane making landfall near you for there to be significant life-threatening hazards and impacts in your community. As we saw last year from the example of Hurricane Helene, there were 175 direct fatalities from Helene. The vast majority of them occurred in Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, well away from where Helene actually made landfall. There were 95 fatalities from freshwater flooding and landslides, over 60 fatalities from wind, 14 fatalities from storm surge. But it's noteworthy that those storm surge fatalities occurred in the Tampa Bay region, well south of where Helene actually made landfall, up in the Big Bend region. And it's important for communities along the East Coast to remember that some of the most impactful storms we have along the East Coast of the United States actually can come from hurricanes that make landfall along the Gulf Coast. And that's especially true for freshwater flooding, which is almost entirely independent of how strong a storm is from a wind perspective. And freshwater flooding has been responsible for the majority of direct U.S. tropical cyclone fatalities over the last 10 or so years. And it's important to remind everyone that post-storm safety is just as big of an issue as safety during the storm itself. In terms of overall fatalities, what we call indirect deaths, which largely occur after the storm, they've been almost as numerous as the direct fatalities over the last several years, and we'll touch a little bit on that a little later. But we've been in an extraordinary period of hurricane activity in the U.S. with 25 hurricane landfalls since 2017. So just about every part of the U.S. coastline, from Texas through Florida up the East Coast to Maine, has seen impacts during this period from either landfalling storms or the impacts of storms that have moved that region. So for everyone in these hurricane-prone areas, it's really important now is the time to assess your risk. First and foremost, find out if you live in a storm surge evacuation zone, if you're a coastal resident. That is the key to your hurricane preparedness process and timeline and plan that you're going to put into place for yourself and your family. Because if you live in a storm surge evacuation zone or otherwise flood-prone area, you could be asked to leave your home in the event of a storm by your state or local officials. And if you are going to be asked, you need to know where you're going to go, how you're going to get there, what you're going to take with you. And it's important to remember that you only have to drive usually tens of miles, not hundreds of miles, to get out of those storm surge evacuation zones to a safe place where you can ride out the storm. And this is really important, especially for residents in Florida and along the Gulf Coast, because we can have these short fuse hurricane events that develop where we have systems form nearby, like Helene, like Milton, like Michael, like Laura. Many of the storms we've had that have been very impactful in the last few years have formed and made landfall within just 3 or 4 days. So it's important to have that hurricane plan in place for you and your family ahead of time. Strengthen your home. Know what your home's vulnerabilities are. If you live in a mobile home, you may not be able to safely shelter there during a tropical storm or hurricane. You may be asked to leave. Do an insurance checkup. Now is the time to make sure that your property and your possessions are properly insured. Think about flood insurance as an option for you and your family as well. And it's always important to have that disaster supply kit in place, not just for hurricanes, but for any disaster or hazard you or your family may face. Several days worth of non-perishable food, water, critical medicine, medical supplies that you might need, batteries, charging equipment, a battery-powered radio, ways to communicate with you and your family if you do face the aftermath of a significant storm, especially with long-term widespread power outages. It's also important, and the media here today is a big part of this, is to help people know where to find trusted information when a hurricane threatens. You want to really know now who are your local government officials, your local emergency managers who are going to be providing you information about how to keep you and your family safe when a storm threatens. Those officials that are going to be ordering evacuations and other safety preparedness information. So find them now. Follow them on social media. Know where to get that information on the web or online or through local media outlets. Follow the National Hurricane Center. We're here at hurricanes.gov. You can follow our social media. You're going to find the forecast and warning and hazard information that we put out. And you can also find information down to your local community scale from your local National Weather Service office at weather.gov. And the media is here. The media is an important part of our effort to get information to people. Find your trusted local media sources, broadcast meteorologists who know your community and know how to communicate that risk to you and your family. And most importantly, have multiple ways to get weather alerts when a storm threatens. You can enable wireless emergency alerts on your cell phone. You will get a WIA alert if a storm surge warning or hurricane warning is issued for your area. You can have smartphone apps that will warn you, NOAA weather radio, battery-powered radio, television. And it's also important to make sure that you can get alerts for flash flooding and tornadoes that can also occur during tropical cyclones. Some of the things that we're rolling out new for this hurricane season, we're going to have our experimental cone again this year that we first rolled out at the peak of last hurricane season, showing inland tropical storm and hurricane watches and warnings across the United States to better convey that inland wind risk. It was really great to have that during Helene last year, which was the deadliest hurricane from wind impacts in the United States since at least the 1960s, bringing wind hazards all the way inland into western North Carolina. We have on hurricanes.gov an experimental viewer of rip current risk information that's put out by local National Weather Service offices to help better convey the risk of rip currents for often distant tropical storms and hurricanes that can create dangerous ocean conditions. Rip currents have been one of the leading causes of fatalities in tropical storms and hurricanes in the United States over the last 10 years. And we're also going to work on improved messaging of post-storm heat risk. After Hurricane Beryl affected Texas last year, there were more than 15 heat-related fatalities. Heat after an event with power outages, no air conditioning, has become an increasing source of fatalities in tropical storms and hurricanes. So we'll be working on post-storm heat messaging to look for areas where there is that risk of excessive heat overlaid with areas that could experience long-duration power outages. I also want to mention we are going to be pushing out our lead time to get information out to the public and to emergency managers for dangerous systems that are developing near land, like Helene. We're going to be pushing some of that pre-formation forecast and hazard information out to as much as 72 hours in advance of when a storm makes landfall this year, when we have high confidence of those significant impacts. So after my overview, I want to turn it over to Captain Ortenzio. He is the Chief of Incident Management at U.S. Coast Guard District 7 here in Miami, responsible for a variety of activities, including search and rescue and just overall maritime safety from Florida through the Caribbean. They are a great partner of ours, and we provide them a lot of information to help them with their life-saving mission at sea, search and rescue, but not just at sea, but also on land after significant hurricane events. Captain Ortenzio is going to become the commanding officer of U.S. Coast Guard Station in Miami next month, and invite him up here to make some remarks.
Good morning. My name is Aaron Ortenzio, as Mike passed. So with hurricane season upon us, the big things, and I think Mike already kind of hit on a lot of it, is preparedness and awareness. being prepared, and when we're talking about the maritime environment, especially in the southeast United States, a lot of live aboard vessels, the individuals need to have a plan of a safe haven for their boat, how they're going to moor their boat correctly, and then not riding the storm out on their boat is preferred. These dangerous storms, oftentimes the storm surge is what people underestimate, and riding a storm out on a vessel with a 20-foot storm surge is a recipe for disaster. Also, with things to note with the Coast Guard, port closure information, there's a website now for port information. It's navcen.uscg.gov. So that's navcen.uscg.gov. And this is the single point for information on port status. And obviously with the Coast Guard, working in conjunction with our partners at the National Hurricane Center, we take the information on real-time basis. So we actually embed the National Hurricane Center forecasts into our planning processes as we make decisions on port closures, moving our resources. So for the Coast Guard, we need to have our ships out of harm's way so they could return back to help reconstitute the ports and save lives. So we really leverage the forecast team here to help us make those decisions 5 to 7 days ahead of time. Aviation, we have a lot more luxury of time with the aircraft being able to fly out, so usually 24 hours. We'll wait to see what the forecast looks like to where we're going to stage our forces. But mainly also post-storm recovery. Oftentimes the aids of navigation will be destroyed, there'll be a lot of debris, or a vessel may have sustained a lot of damage during the storm. So we advise individuals to take precautions prior to getting back underway. But an overarching goal of the Coast Guard is to save lives and protect commerce as we weather these storms at a high frequency in recent years. So standing by for any questions at this time. I'll turn it over to Maria.
All right. No, thank you so much for both your remarks. So yeah, before we begin, so please state your name and your station that you're affiliated with and who you're going to be directing your question to. All right. So with that, I'll go ahead and start taking questions. Oh, yeah. Seth. Yeah.
Evan Brown, Fox News. I guess for the captain, but it could be for either of you. This September will be 10 years since the sinking of El Faro. This concerns, I guess, both of you and your outfits here. That was a catastrophe that I think a lot of people felt could have been avoided. What do we know better, and that involves communication with private, commercial shipping, but how do we impress upon them, don't go near the storm even though your boat is really, really, really big? It's still not a good idea. I'm going to start.
Well, from a search and rescue preparedness, obviously, one of the things that have changed in the last 10 years is the ability of internet service underway. So with the access to information, decision-making should be improved from a weather forecasting perspective. As far as AI, also there's a system, AIS, where we track vessels as they move in. And you could actually see the National Hurricane Center has a slide that they could show is when their forecasts go out, it shows the AIS traffic heeding the call of where the storm is. And I would say based on the enhanced messaging and the lessons learned from the El Faro case, we're seeing a lot greater compliance and respect for the weather forecast throughout the maritime community. And I don't know if they have that slide available, but it's really powerful to see how those vessel tracks change as the forecast models are going out.
How are those available, A, to the mariners, and also just the general public? Is it on a website that's easily viewable?
Are you talking about the weather forecasts?
No, the graphics that you're...
Well, the AIS is something that AIS is a system in which vessels of greater than 65 feet that are commercial vessels have, it's a transponder that broadcasts their position. Right. And so there's a system that monitors that. And so this is just an after action look back of, hey, here's when the weather came out, here's where all these vessels were going. I think there's a depiction of I I think it was Beryl from last year that was going into Texas, and it showed all the vessels coming out and then all of them diverting south of the track, and then as the storm passed them coming back in. So that from a search and rescue professional standpoint, that makes me very heeding that information, changing their course, and then once it's safe to return back to their initial course and return to commerce, they're doing that. So I think there is a lot of lessons, not only in the ship out the maritime community from the El Faro, that we are seeing changes in how behaviors in the face of storms.
We put a lot of people down in the Keys with all the new construction and everything. Is there any kind of a change of a contingency plan to get them out when the storms start coming in?
For the U.S. Coast?
Either one.
For either one, I think.
I can start. I mean, I can't speak to exactly what plans Monroe County has, but certainly we provide, the lead time and information that they need to make, evacuation decisions based on storm surge and other risks that get communicated to them through the local National Weather Service office in Key West. So, we provide the storm surge risk mapping that gives them an idea of what areas are vulnerable to storm surge within the Keys and helps them make their evacuation plans. But I can't speak directly to what their plans may be at the moment.
Right, because there's a lot more houses down there within the past 2 or 3 years, but the roads are still the same size.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's a trend we see along coastal populations continue to increase. So even as forecasts get better, information gets better, there's still as much, if not more, vulnerability with people continuing to move into hurricane-prone areas, and that's, I think the Keys are no exception there.
Is there anyone who could address the bridges, like in mine, bridges going up and down? Would that be you, sir?
Well, I can address the drawbridge. So for awareness, anytime winds are in excess of 39 miles per hour, the drawbridges are fixed down. So it pertains more to the maritime community. If you need to move your vessel and you're waiting and those winds pick up, your vessel is not going to be able to get through that drawbridge because it's going to be in a lockdown position. So that goes back to the awareness and preparedness piece, is if you have a high sail area vessel, a sailboat, or a larger craft, and you need to move it to a safe haven, or you need to make sure you're doing that well in advance to those winds increasing. So oftentimes that's probably at least 48 hours out. You should be thinking about moving your boat to a inland position if it involves transiting through drawbridge areas.
Okay. I know, Glenn, you had some?
I did, yeah.
Go for it.
Brennan, you really helped fill a social media void from the National Hurricane Center over the past couple of years. I mean, your talkbacks last year, your YouTube videos, what is the feedback been on all of that?
Yeah, thanks for that question. I think overall it's been really positive. I think it's important for us to have an avenue to get our message out. We're trying to expand our reach. For many, many years we've had the media pool, but we know people consume information in much different ways now. And doing live streams and other posts on social media allow us to get our information out there sooner. The media pool used to be kind of tied to the hurricane watch warning phase. We've got a lot more information. We can provide people a lot more lead time now. So the live streams, I know, get picked up by media, and it helps us sort of cut through some of the noise in the community and get one of those trusted voices out there. And it also provides talking points and information that the rest of the media and emergency management community can then amplify our perspective.
How about from the general public, though? I have a lot of friends who aren't meteorologists
Yeah.
who really enjoy your videos.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and I think that's the goal, is to kind of reach that entire community. The general public, we know people see them on Facebook or YouTube. And again, it's important to have that authoritative information out there about the storm. Sometimes it's to raise awareness. Sometimes it's to prevent, incredible or not credible information from getting out there that can kind of keep people at a better level of readiness and understand what the threat is or what it isn't at the time. Yeah.
I have a question. It's for Mike. I'm Greg Allen from NPR. I wonder if, I know you in the past have done a lot of training with emergency managers. I guess I want to ask you about what's happened this year on that.
Sure.
But it's not just about coastal areas now. how do you deal with people in the mountains of North Carolina and Georgia? I mean, those people, do they get training? Do they have the connection that you want to have with them to understand the warnings?
Yeah, we hosted 3 week-long training courses here back in January and February for coastal emergency managers that are sponsored by FEMA. So we trained over 60 EMs here for week-long courses on hurricane hazards, tools that we provide, how to use that information to help make evacuation decisions, largely focused on storm surge. There is a FEMA-sponsored course that focuses on inland hurricane risk, primarily on rainfall flooding. I don't know the exact nature of those. We're not as directly involved with those. They tend to focus more on the local National Weather Service offices in the FEMA regions. But it's a great point, and it really goes back to what I said about hurricanes can have significant inland impacts. Helene was the most impactful hurricane to affect the continental United States since Katrina in terms of fatalities, in terms of damage. And it's important to get that message out to inland communities, especially in flood-prone areas, because that freshwater flooding has been such a significant source of fatalities in recent years. Those types of rainfall events do occur. I mean, we can go back and look at the aftermath of Ida up into the New York area from a storm that made landfall along the Gulf Coast with catastrophic urban flooding in the New York City metro area. We had Harvey in southeast Texas in 2017. So we've seen multiple of these catastrophic level flooding events. I think Helene was noteworthy for the scale at which it occurred on. It was relatively well forecast, but again, trying to communicate rainfall totals and get that information to people in a way that they know what's going to happen in their community is really important, and being able to visualize those impacts. And the National Weather Service is working on rolling out flood inundation mapping across the country. It's rolling out kind of state by state or region by region, but that will provide an impact, a visual in those communities and along rivers.
It just seems like it's a more difficult messaging for those inland communities, especially if you're in the mountains.
Yeah.
Where to evacuate to.
Yeah.
If you see across here in Florida, it seems in retrospect, we just go inland. It's not so, that's not the case in those areas.
Yeah, the community scale evacuation plans in place in inland areas. To get there for storm surge, it's taken 40 or 50 or 60 years of, go all the way back to Camille and the investment in storm surge modeling and evacuation zones and planning. And that's just for coastal areas. To expand that to inland areas where it can flood anywhere it can rain, or even downstream of anywhere it can rain. So it's a much bigger effort that's going to require sustained investment. And there is work starting to happen in that space, but as you mentioned, it's a much larger problem in terms of scale and vulnerability. Yeah. Well, we're ready here. That's what I can speak to, is directly the readiness of us and our staff here at the National Hurricane Center. We have 2 FEMA liaisons as part of the hurricane liaison team that work here in the building with us, and they are our conduit to the emergency management community at the federal, state, and local level, and we're ready to meet the needs of the EM community across the country as they come up this hurricane season, just as we always are.
So with that, thank you so much. That concludes the briefing, but thank you guys so much for coming. And if you have any other questions or any interview scheduled for the rest of now into the afternoon, please come to me and I'll assist you with that, okay? Thank you so much. All right, thank you.
And those were officials at the National Hurricane Center highlighting the need to get ready now for what's expected to be a busy hurricane season. And again, just wanted to highlight those numbers one more time. The NHC forecasting up to 19 named storms this year. 6 to 10 of those could become hurricanes, and then 3 to 5 forecasted to become major hurricanes, which are Category 3 and above. We're going to take a very quick break, and we will bring you the very latest on the Diddy case on the other side. Stay with us. Any moment now, let's take you there live.
15 seconds. T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition. Engines full power. Falcon, go SpaceX, go GPS 37.
Vehicles pitching downrange. Chamber pressure nominal.
At T plus 30 seconds and counting, Falcon 9 has successfully lifted off from Space Launch Complex 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. Now, during the rocket's ascent, we tilt or gimbal the engines, and that'll turn the rocket horizontally in a maneuver known as a gravity turn. So the rocket is still going up.
Power telemetry nominal.
Good call out there. So the rocket is still going up, but now it's also headed horizontally away from the launch pad.
Moments ago, we throttled the engines down on the first stage in preparation for max Q, or maximum aerodynamic pressure. This is a critical moment during flight
Vehicle is supersonic.
because the combined stresses caused by Falcon 9 accelerating through the atmosphere and the ambient static pressure are at their greatest.
Max Q.
Good call out there for max Q. The rocket typically needs to go about 17,500 miles per hour horizontally in order to avoid being pulled down to Earth and get into orbit.
And to give you an idea of the speed of the rocket, you can track our progress to orbit by keeping an eye on the Stage 1 telemetry at the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. Now we're going to have another good call out there. We're going to have several events coming up in quick succession, starting with main engine cutoff, or MECO, stage separation, second engine 1, and fairing separation.
Main engine cutoff, or MECO, is where all 9 Merlin 1D engines shut down to slow the vehicle down in preparation for stage separation, which is where the first stage separates from the second stage. The MVAC engine on the second stage will light, which is called out as Second Engine Start 1, or SES-1.
Now this engine burn, lasting several minutes, will propel the second stage and the payload to orbit. In addition to these 3 major events, the fairing halves will separate shortly after SES-1, so keep an eye out for all of these events coming up in just a few moments from now.
Nominal trajectory. MECO.
Stage separation confirmed.
MVAC startup.
And there you heard and maybe even saw those events that happened just back to back, which were again MECO, stage separation, and SES-1. Coming up in just a few moments, we should hear the call out for fairing separation.
Fairing separation confirmed.
Good call out there for fairing separation and a beautiful view of Earth from space. As mentioned earlier, we will be attempting to retrieve these fairing halves using our recovery vessel Doug once they fall back to Earth.
And these are some absolutely phenomenal views today. Now, we're currently at the T plus 4 minute mark into today's mission. Next major milestone coming up will be just past the T plus 6 minute mark, which will be the first stage's entry burn. For the entry burn, we'll be relighting 3 of the M1D engines on the first stage, starting with the center E9 engine, followed shortly after by the E1 and E5 engines. This will help slow down the vehicle as it passes back into Earth's denser, lower atmosphere. We need to slow it down to reduce re-entry forces, which ultimately helps us recover and reuse the first stage.
During the entry burn, Falcon 9 is decelerating by firing its Merlin engines, but we're still moving really fast. This causes the vehicle to fly through Merlin's exhaust gases, and this deposits a layer of soot on the vehicle's surface, which is why our flight-proven vehicles look the way they do. That soot comes from the carbon-based fuel that Falcon 9 uses. As you can see on your screen, on the bottom left, the first stage is decelerating and heading to its rendezvous point at sea.
Now, reusability is, of course, key to lowering the cost of spaceflight, which enables more investment in critical scientific research. The Falcon 9 first stage that is supporting today's mission is...
Two nominal trajectories.
Another good call out there. The Falcon 9 first stage that is supporting today's mission is flying for its 4th time. And while this booster is on its 4th trip to space, we're working towards qualifying our fleet of Falcon boosters and fairings to support 40 missions each. And for those following along, we're currently at 28 flights of a single Falcon booster, which is absolutely amazing. Increasing Falcon's flight count provides valuable information on repeated reuse, which is a critical element for making life multiplanetary. Coming up in just about 15 seconds from now, we should hear that call out for the first stage entry burn startup.
Stage 1 entry burn startup.
And great call out there for entry burn startup of the Falcon 9 first stage. And you can actually see which engines are lit with that graphic at the lower left-hand corner of your screen.
Stage 1 FTS is saved.
Stage 1 entry burn shutdown.
And great call out there for entry burn shutdown of the Falcon 9 first stage.
The Merlin engines on the Falcon's first stage are optimized for sea leveling, and these achieve 190,000 pounds of thrust during ascent and descent. And while it won't be visible on this webcast, the single MVAC engine on the second stage has a much wetter nozzle and is optimized to operate in space, producing 220,000 pounds of thrust in vacuum. Coming up in couple moments, we will have the landing burn of the first stage. The landing burn is the final burn of the Falcon 9 booster used to reduce the remaining speed of the vehicle in order to allow for a soft touchdown on the drone ship.
Now, this will be the 4th landing burn of this booster. As I mentioned earlier, this booster previously supported CRS-32.
Stage 1 transonic.
Another good call out there.
Stage 2 has entered terminal guidance.
And another good call out. So this booster previously supported CRS-32, a commercial resupply service mission to the International Space Station, a separate national security mission, NROL-69, and one Starlink mission.
Stage 2 FTS is saved.
Stage 1 landing burn.
And there's that call out for landing burn startup of the Falcon 9 first stage.
Landing leg deploy.
Nominal orbit insertion.
And there you saw and heard the call
Stage
out.
1 landing confirmed.
There you saw and heard the call out for successful landing of our Falcon 9 rocket. We also heard the call out for SECO 1. Again, this was the 4th launch and landing for this first stage.
And the second stage is now embarking on its first coast phase, which will last about an hour before a second restart of Merlin vacuum engine, also known as SES-2. We're going to take a break during that coast, and we'll return just before SES-2. See you then.
At don't know about you, but that was pretty cool to watch unfolding live out of Florida's Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. They did manage to make that 15-minute window to launch successfully SpaceX's Falcon 9 rocket there. This is notable for a couple of reasons. One, this was record-breaking short notice. They just got this launch order on March 7th, meaning all of the prep work happened in less than 3 months. For context, it usually takes around 18 to 24 months, according to Space Force officials. Secondly, the mission you saw happening in real time there, launching an advanced GPS satellite into Earth's orbit for the U.S. Space Force. This GPS built by Lockheed Martin. Very cool, and of course, as they were saying, reusable rockets crucial for our dominance in space in the future. We have a whole lot of coverage to get to today. As promised, very latest in the Diddy trial. We'll bring that to you right after this short break. Stay with us. Hey, welcome back. I'm Natasha Zubes here in the NewsNation newsroom, joining you on this Friday, the 30th. So glad to be with you. Keeping this live stream up right next to me of that successful SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket launch and landing that just took place. We watched that together in the last 15 minutes or so. But as promised as well, we want to bring you the very latest on the Diddy case. Former federal prosecutor Maria Cruz Melendez joined NewsNation's Ashley Banfield to discuss the claims made by Diddy's former assistant. That former assistant providing more insight into the relationship with Cassie Ventura. Let's take a listen to that conversation.
I can't believe the number of naysayers that I don't know if you're watching the media coverage and the analysis on the Diddy trial. I'm following it moment to moment, and I see RICO left, right, and center. But so many people who are smart lawyers say, nope, nothing to see here. What do you think?
I think there are a couple of things. I think it's tough to ask the question about whether or not the government has proven RICO, particularly so early on. I know there was a lot of commentary very, very early on. And when you're first getting the victim's statements about things, I think it's very easy to say, well, the victim is just talking about domestic violence or assault issues that are more state law types of issues. However, I think, and you mentioned this in your opening, the fact that Mia has testified to information that she obtained as a person who worked for Sean Combs, which means she was inside of the enterprise that has been charged by the government. And so in that situation, I think she provides powerful evidence that can be used by the government to show that an enterprise existed and that the enterprise was used, including herself, in order to engage in the conduct that's been alleged. One of the other things I would just quickly note as well is that in this case, RICO itself, substantive RICO, hasn't been charged. Racketeering conspiracy is what has been charged. And so what the government needs to show is that Sean Combs agreed with at least one other person to engage in racketeering. And so they don't have to prove specific racketeering acts in the way that you would need to if you would charge substantive racketeering.
Do you see a lot of similarities between the R. Kelly case and the Diddy case? Because everybody wants to compare, this particular case to the mob, and they say there's no similarity between them. What about R. Kelly?
Yeah, there's certainly parallels. You have a high-profile defendant who's alleged to have abused his legitimate business and the people around him, his circle of people, whether that's friends, colleagues, but also individuals who specifically worked for him, assistants, runners, security, in order to make sure that he was able to commit the crimes that have been alleged. And I think some of the testimony that has happened this week in particular demonstrates the ways in which that he used individuals at his disposal in order to maintain control over individuals like Cassie Ventura.
Yeah, I keep hearing evidence of coercion, control, fear. I'm also hearing obstruction of justice. I'm hearing bribery. I'm hearing all these predicate acts, right? But still, so many analysts are saying, no, there's no enterprise here. Where do you see the enterprise coming in with Diddy, enterprise that came in with R. Kelly?
Yeah, the enterprises, I think, are similar as well. Something that people sometimes confuse about racketeering is that they think that the enterprise has to be criminal. With racketeering, that's not the case. You can have a legitimate enterprise. And the question is whether or not that legitimate enterprise, which can be a business, is being used in order to commit the pattern of racketeering that's been charged. And with racketeering enterprises, it can be as informal as a pickup basketball team. So as long as individuals are associated in fact and they're engaging in that's alleged, then you've got an enterprise. And so the fact that Sean Combs has a business that functioned where he had individuals who were at his disposal, and to the extent he used assistants or other individuals who worked for him, who were in his orbit, in his circle, then I think an enterprise can be, and I think we've heard a lot of evidence that shows an enterprise has been proven.
Yeah, isn't it interesting? I think a lot of people also don't know that the feds can use the language knowing or unknowing in terms of committing a crime. So some of these assistants who may have been dispatched to commit a crime, let's just say Uncle Paulie, the testimony that Uncle Paulie took poor Capricorn Clark to a vacant building and threatened that she was going to swim with the fishes in the East River and, told her she had to take lie detector tests for 5 days. Sounds to me like Uncle Paulie should have known that's kidnapping. But even if Uncle Paulie didn't know it was kidnapping, there's the knowing and unknowing aspect of it, isn't there?
Absolutely. Individuals who are members of the enterprise, that label doesn't mean that you yourself know that criminal activity is happening or that you've engaged in criminal activity. It means that you, in particular instances, it means that you yourself have provided some sort of an assistance to the individual who's being charged with racketeering. And so in this situation, you've got Sean Combs using security, using assistance, using anyone who's at his disposal as part of his organization and his business in order to engage in the charged conduct. I think one of the things we heard from Mia that's been reported is that she said at one point she didn't provide information or she didn't tell law enforcement, and that at certain times she didn't say no to Sean Combs because of the way he reacted if she had said no to bringing him a sandwich. And so I think she certainly had very, very strong testimony that suggested that he not only used and coerced Cassie Ventura, but also when it came to his assistants like Mia, also exerted control via humiliation. And other forms, including financial form. I think you mentioned earlier the fact that he threatened her pay during certain instances. And so all of these things have been alleged as the means and methods of the enterprise. And I think that the government is certainly trying to get all this information in order to prove those allegations that have been made in the indictment.
And our thanks to Ashley Banfield there. You can watch the complete interview on NewsNation's YouTube page. A whole lot of coverage today on NewsNation Now. Of course, that live SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket launch and landing that we saw take place in Florida today within the hour. That live stream still up next to me. Abroad, we took you to Pete Hegseth's visit to Singapore. And then here at home, a long-standing mission for us, NewsNation's Chris Cuomo and Rich McHugh, spotlighting the residents of East Palestine as their fight continues. Earlier on, we also brought you live as Todd and Julie Chrisley making headlines, speaking to the press for the very first time today since they were pardoned by President Trump. As always, it's such a pleasure to be with you here, and I'm Natasha Zubes at NewsNation headquarters. Our coverage continues now at newsnationnow.com, and if you haven't already, I encourage you, go to joinnn.com, go ahead and put in your zip code and find out how to watch our main channel wherever you live. Until next time, stay safe, have a great weekend. Failure